meeting of the Bloomington Board of Education to order on Monday, October 26th. We apologize for being a little late with starting this meeting. There's a closed meeting of the Personnel Committee. There's some business to discuss regarding negotiations and superintendent's evaluation. I'll have something to say about that at the conclusion of our meeting. But before we get started, I want to welcome everybody who's here in the audience and recognize, acknowledge the work that's been going on today, as it's our first day back at school for those who are not new teachers. It's not also for administrators in back at school, but teachers are back on duty today in very hot buildings. People have been working hard to get some things done and get us off to a good start this week. And so welcome those of you who are in the audience today. And will you please join us now in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. This meeting has combined some items that were set aside as a separate study session in an earlier draft agenda. So we will have items that will be primarily for the purpose of reporting. We have a Part A agenda, which has some resolutions, and then Part B will be some reports to bring us up to date on some school district business. So is there a motion for approval of the agenda tonight?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to move one of those items to Part B, if I could.
Yes, and that would be which item?
Part A, 1A, just the personnel issues. Not that I'm objecting to any of the personnel, but I have some questions.
Okay, there's a question. I would like 1A moved into Part B agenda. Is there a second? Okay, it's moved and seconded then. Is there discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So we have changed the agenda to move that item to Part B agenda. Then may we move ahead with the approval of the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign, and that carries. And then we'll move to the Part A agenda. We generally pass that in toto without much conversation, unless there's some questions somebody has. I'd entertain a motion for Part A approval.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded for approval of Part A. Is there any question or discussion related to Part A agenda? You're correct. I will make sure to do that next. Part A, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. And it carries. It's been pointed out to me I didn't ask for recognition of students, staff, and public. Was my information that we did not have someone who's going to speak to the board. But that's no reason not to invite, if they wish to, that they would approach the table on microphone addresses. Is there anyone who'd like to address the board tonight? There is. My apologies for jumping ahead without knowing you wanted to speak. Wendy Marchek. Joe Mavison. We welcome you. And it's an oversight, not trying to cut you off at all, so we welcome hearing from you tonight.
Thank you. Chair Culver, Superintendent Fujitake, school board members. My name is Wendy Marchek, and I am the president of the Bloomington Federation of Teachers. And tonight I'd like to introduce Joe Mavison as a member. He's going to be speaking tonight on a comment that was made at the last board meeting on Monday that we feel as an organization must be discussed. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Chair Culver, members of the board, Superintendent Fujitake, members of the cabinet, and the listening audience. We are here tonight to respond to some comments that were made at last week's school board meeting regarding the Bloomington Federation of Teachers' current position of neutrality with respect to the referendum election being brought to the voters in November. At that meeting, you will recall that you received a very positive, encouraging report from Decision Resources about polling conducted to sample the interests of Bloomington voters in the referendum renewal question. Your pollsters and the Director of Communications and Emergency Management, Mr. Kaufman, with Garrison Keillor-like charm, provided a comprehensive analysis of data related to voter opinion about the Bloomington Public Schools. They spoke glowingly about the district's educational quality, excellent administration, financial management, and voter demographic trends in Bloomington. it was clear that district administration and the school board were highly regarded by the public, with 78% positive ratings. It was also abundantly clear that the teachers and instructional staff, with a rating of 90% positive, were the key indicator of why the Bloomington schools are so highly regarded in the survey. Your pollster, in his gushing praise, noted that the teacher ratings, quote, broke the glass barrier at the top, end quote, that few districts made it to that 90% rating, and a ratio of positive to negative ratings of 16-1. He further added that there were no red flags regarding the work that Bloomington Schools staff, especially teachers, were doing in the eyes of the public. Your pollster also indicated that the two most significant concerns were related to a perceived lack of funding and large class sizes. Yet the district was among the top 3 in the state with respect to financial management. We can tell you that the members of the Bloomington Federation of Teachers shared the same concerns regarding the vulnerability of school funding to the political winds of the legislative process. We have also shared grave concern about ever-increasing class size, and we ask you, who would better know about the impact of class size on learning than our classroom teachers? Our concerns are even more significant given the huge fund balance that the Bloomington Schools currently has, but more on that later. After this glowing and rosy presentation about the likelihood of the referendum being approved in the election, a few clarifying questions were asked by school board members. In response to a question regarding the likelihood of the referendum being passed if the employee groups do not take an active role in promoting the referendum, the pollster expressed his absolute shock that the teachers were not supporting the referendum, noting that this was in contrast to past referenda. He went on to add that from a strategic point of view, it was incomprehensible that teachers would not favor the referendum. He cited possibilities that there was a missing element in the referendum, using examples of something to address the needs of at-risk students or different technology approaches. However, he never polled teachers to our knowledge. Mr. Kaufman then made reference to the teacher union's neutrality as being problematic. He expressed concerns about teachers honestly or accurately answering questions from parents when given the messages the district is putting forth. We are here tonight to set the record straight about the position of the Bloomington Federation of Teachers regarding the referendum question. We have followed the development of this referendum question from the beginning, when the board discussed the need for a school safety and security audit after the Sandy Hook tragedy, through the results of the audit that you received this spring. We have also followed the presentations of district staff regarding the use of technology by students and staff, and the need to integrate technology into the curriculum that is taught by teachers and from preschool through adulthood. Throughout the evolution of this dual-focused plan, we have voiced specific concerns to the superintendent and district administration about the scope and direction of the school safety issue, the demands on teacher instructional time to integrate this new technology, and other important political and practical issues. What we have received from the administration is similar to what we have received from your pollster, expressions of shock and frustration that we would not get on board with this plan simply because we should all support safe schools and the latest technology. There are some very skilled and knowledgeable technology gurus in this district, and they have done great work with our teachers to improve instruction through the use of the latest technology. But this referendum is proposing to make some significant changes in how we do business. That is, how to deliver quality instruction to our students. If there is no time for training on how to use this technology effectively, if there is insufficient technical support to ensure that students' equipment is repaired and replaced in a timely manner, or if time required for managing all of this cuts into instructional time, how is this going to be better for students? We have many questions. We have received few specific answers, but plenty of assurances. Yes, teachers support technology, but at what cost in terms of time and training? We need real answers, not platitudes. With respect to school safety and security, our teachers report that they feel the greatest threat to Bloomington schools does not come from the deranged shooter. These events, while dramatic and horrible and clearly incomprehensible, are extremely rare. Far more school-aged youth die in this country from suicide or forms of neglect than from school shootings. What is much more frequently experienced in the Bloomington schools is primarily a verbal or physical assault on a teacher because the learner did not get the grade they wanted or was disciplined for inappropriate behavior. Or secondly, from threats of violence toward another student because the student felt disrespected. These stories never make the headlines, nor should they, but we deal with them every week. What is also encountered in our schools is bullying or intimidation by one student toward another, or by the irate parent against a staff member because their child did not get to play or did not get the grade they should have. We are confronted with the unmet mental health needs of students, mostly because the child mental health system in the state is broken. The educational system and the children's mental health system do not work together functionally or practically for many reasons. Chief among them is funding, along with issues of who is responsible for delivery of service. What the schools need are more interventionists, counselors, psychologists, and social workers, starting at the preschool programs and elementary schools where early intervention can make a difference. There is plenty of research in the professional literature to demonstrate the effectiveness of early intervention and school support programs. The Bloomington schools have begun investing in RTI, or response to intervention, and PBIS, positive behavioral interventions and supports, and continue to support cultural and diversity awareness. But this school safety and security referendum will not address those needs. This referendum will add a degree of physical safety to those seeking to enter our school buildings and maybe help track our visitors, but these dollars will not address the core needs of teachers that teachers feel need to be addressed, the need for psychological security and safety. That healthy fund balance should be tapped to support student mental health needs as a priority. School safety means much more than holding fire drills, lockdowns, and severe weather drills. Teachers are very compliant and serious about conducting our mandatory safety drills. However, we conduct these drills in a robotic manner, never challenging staff and students by varying the nature of the situation, blocking an exit, conducting them during inclement weather, or, heaven forbid, including lunch or passing time, when critical events like these are more likely to occur. That would be too disruptive. We have been told that that will change. It is in the emergency plan. We have staff members asking to see the district emergency operations plan so that a site plan can be updated and brought into compliance with the district plan. We have a self-proclaimed and self-promoting national expert on school safety in this district for 6 years, but yet we do not have an emergency operations manual for the district, or for that matter, in our buildings. You ask why the teachers and possibly other employee groups are remaining neutral on this referendum question. There are many more reasons than the few we have raised this evening. We remain open to supporting the referendum when we get answers to these questions, but we will be not coaxed into supporting this referendum simply because we are told it is good for kids or because it will look good for teachers to support the effort. Teachers are concerned with statements made by district administration that describe the referendum as being tax neutral, or that there will be no tax increase associated with this referendum. The facts as we see them are that tax increases are based on increasing property valuations. As citizens see their property tax statements increase as a result of the improving economy and real estate market, they will likely feel that they were not told the truth. More importantly, in 2 years, these same voters will be asked to authorize the more important excess levy, which directly supports instruction. When taxes increase as a result of this current referendum question, we fear that the voters could react negatively and not approve the excess levy. That would have a much more profound impact on student learning because that levy provides critical funding for instructional personnel in the classroom. The loss of that funding would lead to massive cuts of staff and programs, which would drive up class size even further. Your pollster noted that other teacher unions are supporting referendum elections in their districts And historically, the Bloomington Federation of Teachers in Bloomington has supported referendum elections in the past. We agree with that statement. Teachers in other school districts are supporting the referendum because they feel like true partners in education with their school administration. They are not considered subordinates that should go along simply because the district leadership knows what is good for all. The BFT members have historically worked hard to enlist voter support for previous referenda. We have provided both financial support from our local union, Education Minnesota, and the AFL-CIO, and we have given hundreds of volunteer hours to staff phone banks and distribute literature. However, after the last levy election, it was demoralizing to our members to see all the credit for the successful campaign being given to the leadership of the communications department. When we now pose legitimate questions to the national school safety expert or our district financial wizards, we are considered disrespectful and mindless and then shamed by your consultant and administrator in a public forum. After all, district administrators only have the best interests of students in mind. Trust us, they say. We know what is best. It is time to change the way we do business here in the Bloomington schools. Our members have earned the respect of the public through the hard work that they do in the classroom and in the roles non-classroom personnel play to support student learning. We have data that shows positive results when you look at the test scores of our students. Your own polling confirms that these efforts are recognized by the public. It is time that this board and the district administration become accountable for providing truthful answers to our questions about this referendum. The board must hold district administrators accountable for promoting a safety culture in our schools and providing a real emergency operations plan for the district. Finally, we ask that the district administration publicly acknowledge and express appreciation for the role that teachers have in the success of this district. We should be partners in educating the learners in the Bloomington Public Schools. Public shaming of professionals, high-performing teachers, does not produce behavioral change. It only lowers morale, raises more questions, and results in a lack of trust of the district administration at a critical time. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Mavison. I appreciate your bringing forth your response to what occurred at the last meeting, your concerns. I know I can speak for the administration of the board in saying you've raised some important questions here by what you've said, and I am sure that you'll be receiving some responses to them. Is there anyone else who'd like to address the board on something not on our agenda? Then we'll move to the Part B agenda, and we will begin with the personnel items, 1A. And Director Lyle Ablin, what would you like us to discuss with?
Well, I suppose we should first move it and put it on the table, shouldn't we?
Our Executive Director for Human Resources is now at the table, and so if that's how you'd like to proceed, let's have a motion then to have that item brought forward now. We have a resolution.
Also move.
Lyle.
Also move.
Okay, it's a resolution that the School Board of Independent School District number 271 approve personnel actions as attached. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Yes, Director Ablin.
Okay, thank you. I'm asking these questions not that I disapprove of any of the personnel items listed. I approve of all of them. But I guess I'd like to get a little bit more background in the process that we use in hiring and so forth. In the last two board meetings, we've approved lots of hirings. Can you tell me, sir, how many new staff we've hired over the summer months?
I don't have that information right now. I can get it for you shortly.
Okay, can you give me a rough estimate?
I do not know.
Okay. Well, then let's talk about the procedure of hiring. When there's an opening, where is the opening posted?
It's
How is it
usually
advertised?
posted in 3 places. It's posted outside of HR. It's also posted in the conference that has to do with the, actually, there's a job posting conference that all employees can see. It goes to the individual conference of the union, usually where the vacancy occurs, and it's also posted on the district website.
Okay, we don't advertise in the Star or,
We have not found that to be effective.
okay. Once we have posted it and received applicants, and a building X has an opening, what's the procedure? How does that work? I mean, does a principal go through?
Depends upon the opening. There's a different procedure that's used for most openings. But majority of our, sounds like it's got feedback. Am I just hearing things in my own ear?
You get feedback. Why don't you use another mic?
Okay. I'll change seats here. I didn't think my hearing was that bad.
Let's say there was an elementary opening somewhere.
Let's say an elementary teacher position was open. We have our general policy, not general policies, there are at least, there's a pool that people apply to at the beginning or during the school year, and so we pull those applicants from the pool, and they're interviewed by, all the principals do a number of days of interviewing all elementary positions, openings, for example, in this case. If it's after the pool's closed and there is a interview process that goes, then it goes through at least two to three principals are on an interview committee. And then many times there is an interview at the building level, in a grade level, where the opening occurs to assure a fit.
So who has the final say on hiring? The principal, you, the superintendent?
The supervisor always has the final say.
Okay. This whole process that we use, how effective is it in the district trying to help, the district trying to meet its goal of hiring or diversifying its staff? Where is any attention paid to that goal?
Well, first of all, it's illegal to ask or to require on applicants during the application process the diverse background of any candidate. So that's a voluntary thing that people can place on an applicant, on an application. So you view each application for the criteria by which you have established for the position. Obviously, when you start doing interviews, then you start to see who people are. I've been involved in many of the interviews, for example, all the principals that were hired this year and past years. And there's always a discussion among the interviewees about trying to increase the diversity of our staff. Many times we have someone from the Office of Educational Equity on our team, I think in every case that we had with the principals this year. So I personally don't believe that should be their discussion. I believe it's everybody around the table, but they usually bring that perspective along in case if it's getting neglected, which I haven't seen it happen. And then we hire the best person for the job.
Do you think we as a district or a cabinet or administration, are we making headways on that goal of diversifying our staff now that we've gone through a summer of hiring?
Based upon the primary goal is not to hire people of diverse backgrounds. That's not the primary goal. The primary goal is to hire the best person for the job. And we don't override the best person for the job for a person of a diverse background. I always say in an interview process that if we have two equal candidates, then we would pick the person of that would be the overriding factor. But if it has to come down between hiring of what we would view a lesser qualified candidate because they were from a diverse background versus the best person, I think that would be not following the values of the district. And I do not think any employee who's in this district would want us to hire somebody based upon that criteria.
Do you agree that the district and the cabinet and the superintendent has a goal of diversifying the staff?
Yes, we do.
So in your professional mind, how would we go about accomplishing that goal?
As we have been trying to do, I think there's a number of different efforts which we've already communicated with you back in, I think, in March or April. There you had this very similar question, and we responded to you in that. I think one of the things that we're doing, there are a number of activities that we've tried in the past that haven't been that successful, but I think the best two activities that we've been doing recently are growing our own so that candidates that are coming from Bloomington who are of diverse backgrounds, that we give them special attention when they come in, or when we hear of someone. Adina in the Office of Education Equity is always forwarding us names. I think that's, I think between that and also when we hear of other candidates from other districts who might be interested in, that they get special interest or special consideration. Usually it's a personal touch where you can bring people to the district more than just a general hiring practice. That's what I believe.
Do we have a minimum GPA or grade level that an applicant for a teaching position here has to
We do.
show evidence of?
We do.
What is that?
3.0.
3.0.
I believe that's what it is. I'd have to go back. Since I'm not on the interviews for the teachers, I'd have to verify that, but I believe it's a 3.0.
Do you have any idea how many people of color we have hired this summer? 1, 2, 3, 10, 12?
I have not done that research.
Could you?
I can get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or any further discussion before we move to the vote? Okay, the resolution is in front of you to approve the personnel action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And carries. Next item on our Part B agenda then is Next Technologies for Learning. How it's described on our agenda with John Weiser, Sean Beaverson, and Andy Boudreau. Digital content, digital backpack presentation to us tonight. So thank you for coming. We approach the table, and we'll look forward to the information you share with us. This is very much related to the referendum that we're moving forward with and purchasing digital technology to allow students to take their notebook computers with them. And this is some further discussion and presentation about how we will be adapting our curriculum in order to facilitate better learning using technology.
Good evening. Mr. Chair, Superintendent Fujitaki, board members, cabinet members, guests. Thanks for the opportunity to address you tonight regarding our work with Next Technologies for Learning, NTL for shorthand, focusing on digital content and digital backpack. I'm Tim Anderson, Director of Secondary Teaching and Learning. I think many of you know me. And I'm subbing in on your agenda for Executive Director John Weiser, in part because it's important and incumbent on the system to make sure that you appreciate the partnership that we have between the Academic Services Department, the Technology Department, and also Student Services. So tonight I'm excited for a number of reasons. In particular, I'm excited to be here with a team. As the superintendent reiterated this morning for us at the Back to School celebration, Bloomington is comprised of a wonderful team. And it's my experience that we are working in a culture of collaboration. As was stated by the assistant superintendent to new teachers last week during the new teacher induction process, which, for the record, is regarded as one of the top induction and mentoring programs in the state of Minnesota. So tonight, the team of Andy Boudreau, who is our elementary technology coordinator, and Sean Beaverson, who is our secondary technology coordinator, And Greg Gilbert and Adam Kimpton, who are both teacher leaders at Hubert Olson Middle School, are here to address you. And again, I'm excited about that. We're here to share some of the work going on currently and how we think NTL will enhance, accelerate, and indeed further systematize our efforts in this district, both with the use of classroom tools that make a difference for kids in their learning and providing the commensurate professional development for teachers so they can be supported, so they can feel efficacy in that effort. Highly committed to that, and tonight's presentation is meant to exemplify that in part. So again, this is exciting for me in a number of ways. First, I'm excited because NTL presents an opportunity to further align our work with the strategic directions outlined in our strategic plan. Namely, to develop programs in response to research, best practice, and market conditions, and to provide meaningful professional development for all staff, increase partnerships that expand learning opportunities, and indeed enhance our image. Now, we believe these directions compel us to take the next digital steps, if you will. Second, I'm excited about this tonight because of the opportunities it presents around collaboration. Great things are happening with our Academic Services, Technology, and Student Services partnership to date, as I previously outlined. And we think NTL represents a chance to accelerate that efficacy. Specifically, I look forward to the collaboration about the best ways to use the technology tools included in this plan so kids in our different programming sets can best access the digital opportunities of today. Third, I'm excited to share with you a look at a case study tonight. It's of work that our teacher leaders are doing. Now, earlier this summer, you heard from our elementary teammates, Holly Skadsom and Kelsey Cater, and they demonstrated the power of digital content at the elementary level with flipped instruction. Tonight, we have the opportunity to check in on a case study at the secondary level. A look at digital content and how it's best being used by teacher leaders at Hubert Olson. Now, Mr. Greg Gilbert and Mr. Adam Kimpton got their start in our pilot one-to-one project, 5 years ago or so. Now, these early adopters had the opportunity to live in that environment, and I could tell from talking to them on the way in tonight how excited they really are by the prospect that we could accelerate our efforts and capitalize on what we learned then in our NTL work now. So our vision is that this will allow us to scale this digital effort to more teachers and students faster than otherwise would be possible without it. So without further ado, I'm very excited to cede the floor to my teammates.
Good evening, Superintendent Fuchitaki, Chair Culver. It's a great honor to be here to share a little bit about what's already being done in the Bloomington Public Schools as far as digital content goes. A couple quick reminders for those who are just tuning in for the first time. Next Technologies for Learning is the district effort to personalize learning in order to support students along their pathway to college and career readiness. We believe that this move represents a shift in the way that we do business so that it better reflects the lives that our students are going towards. How do we personalize learning? Using the digital tools, we can do that in 3 categories. We believe by using digital content, we are able to expand the opportunities for students to interact in real-world and meaningful information. By providing anytime, anywhere learning access by using the tools that Adam and Greg will describe, we can allow for our students to extend their learning outside of the classroom time. And then finally, by providing personalized data. So each of our students and their family members can see where they are in the path in relationship to Bloomington Public Schools and have an informed pathway towards where they want to go. Tonight, we will focus primarily on digital content. These two gentlemen represent some of the best work that's being done in this area. They will describe for you their pathway to getting to where they are today. But it's been our belief and our assertion that Next Technology for Learning is about removing the barriers to getting this work done. So, for example, right now, these two gentlemen, if in the current situation, if they want to have their students interact with digital content, they might have to check out a cart or physically move their class, disrupt the class period, move them down to the lab, reset the class, and then get the learning done. And as we know, time is a finite resource, and so by providing the tools needed, we can limit that exposure to time. A little bit of background for the public to try to get out of the tech speak. I don't know, in technology it seems as though they like to make up words, Moodle, Twitter, Google, and so we're going to, just a real brief overview of the core tools that we have working here in Bloomington Public Schools. I have the opportunity to travel around and speak to different districts about my background. I have the opportunity to go nationally and talk at other states about our background, and I can say that I'm very proud of the core tool set that we have in Bloomington Public Schools because it's a stable tool set and it is extremely powerful. So just a little bit about that. So Moodle is our online learning environment. I use the analogy often. It's a poor analogy in that it limits what Moodle is, but if you can think of it as the three-ring binder of resources that a teacher has for each year, Moodle is that three-ring binder at its onset. We currently have 262 active courses in Moodle, which is a great start. In Google Apps for Education, we call ours Bloomington Apps. In the last 6 months, there's been an increase, 71% more documents created in the last 6 months. This will begin the third year of the Google implementation or rollout within the district. So 2 years into it, we're still seeing dramatic increases. One of the, I'll say, wonky facts in that is there's an increase in the use of two tools in Google. One is called Google Forms, which allows for teachers to create quick assessments so that they can assess what's going on in the class in a rapid manner. They can put these together rather quickly. And we've seen a dramatic increase in that, and that just demonstrates that teacher use is expanding beyond just word processing and spreadsheets. Of course, we have smart boards in the district. We have completed, as of the time of this report, 3,663 hours of professional development surrounding the smart board. Each person who receives a smart board in their class receives professional development that's been developed over the years, and there are 4 opportunities for people to get trained on what a smart board means in their classroom. I'm proud of the amount of time that went into that. It is representative of our goal to make sure that the technology is not just dropped upon people's heads, but is actually inserted in the best way into the learning that goes on in the classroom. And then finally, our website, specifically the Hub. Last year, in our first year of the Hub, there were 90,000 student logins, which by any measure is an impressive number. The Hub is there to provide that personalized data, accurate information, forecasts, upcoming assignments, all of the things that in the past, as a classroom teacher, we struggled to make sure that all of our students knew in a meaningful way. And so 90,000 student logins, it's a good start, I'll say. Okay, so that's enough of me talking. I'm going to get out of the way and let Mr. Gilbert and Mr. Kimpton describe their journey using one of the core tools within our system.
Well, I guess as you can tell by the picture, I'm the good-looking guy on top. I'm Greg Gilbert, and this is my colleague.
The more reflective one on the bottom.
And yeah, we're basically here to talk about Moodle or Moodle 2. But checking out Sean's stuff back there a moment ago, flip back, because Moodle
I mean, technology, think about it. When we were growing up, okay, I mean, we had cars and we had books and I had encyclopedias at our house, so I guess that puts me in a certain age. But right now, technology, I mean, it's really the gateway to freedom and information. And if you look on there, hours spent, docs, people logging on, I mean, that's where stuff is. And Moodle is just an access point. And basically, I mean, we're helping students, we're helping kids, adults, access their own life and improve along the way. And you can jump ahead now to past the pictures of the cute guys. And basically, Moodle is kind of, this is our template homepage, which you could say, oh, that's really great, you got a few pictures of colorful stuff on there. Yeah, it's a homepage, right? It's kind of where the base information is, but based on this page, and it's not live, they can go to all the different units, linking here and there, and then
Sure.
and then within a unit, well, or you want to talk about when we started. This is not new.
Yes, this is only probably about a 1/12 of what is actually, you could imagine it as a book, and there's a page behind it for every unit, and every unit expands out to give all of the resources, all of the links, the videos, the study guides, the quizzes and assessments, all of these things that kids can get to 24/7. We hope they're not on at the middle of the night, but
Some
they
are.
could if they wanted to. And it's all there all the time, and we are able to turn things off and turn things on as needed. So it does take some time to build, but it is much more than what you're seeing just on the screen. We'll take you through parts of it that we find super valuable, but we probably should talk about how we got to this point
Yeah.
first.
As Tim said, 5 years or 6, I don't know.
5.
Many years ago, sometimes, we signed up for the 1-to-1, or in my case, the 5-to-1 middle school laptop project that has since come and gone, and kind of starting buying into technology and really seeing how, you know, today's youth, it's kind of where they're at and how to get there. And because of that, we were introduced to Moodle, and Moodle being that warehouse we're going to show you. And over the years, due to students' help, basically, we've been able to kind of fine-tune things into Moodle and get it much more student-friendly than just here's a resource like an encyclopedia, because that's kind of boring, okay? But to be able to use so the students can start using it as a learning tool for themselves, and that's what we're going to kind of focus on.
And Moodle's something that's been out there much longer than 5 years. I've actually used it in college, and if you were to go and take college courses today, many of them are using Moodle or something very similar to it. Moodle was kind of the foundation for it. They're ones that kind of started a lot of it. But pretty much any courses in higher education have some type of interactive online, whether it's an online course completely or if it's an online and in-class class, they have a piece like this to them where students are expected to understand how to navigate and access all their resources. Whereas, you know, in the past, we would be walking around with their textbook. Now it's out there, and they're expected to do things with it and online and stop in. And this is preparing them more and more for that. They will see it probably more as they go on in high school, and then hopefully as they go on to college, it'll just, it's the way school is, and it's going to be in the future.
Let's go to the next slide. So we kind of divvied up, you know, what are the advantages? Well, there are teacher-centered advantages, and of course, there are student advantages. And we can read these to you, and I'm sure we all can read, but, you know, it's a strong web presence. There it is. It's out there. It's public. You can go and look at either of ours right now, et cetera. Awesome. And we can go spy on other people's, which is cool, too. It's dependable. I mean, we created it. We didn't go out and borrow someone from someone else, and then they have control over it. And that's kind of important. It fosters...
That's one thing we got pretty frustrated with. We should share some of the frustrations of when we were in the 1-to-1 pilot, and a lot of the tech initiatives where we got to this point is there was different web pages. Every year it looked like we were trying something new. And teachers always talk about this, and it's always something hard to do, and after a while you just don't want to try anything new. But this is that thing that, at least when I first saw it, I had a feeling and knew that it would be out there. Well, one, I already knew it was, and it's going to be around for a long time. And it's dependable. When we were doing 2 and 3 things that were roughly, you know, kind of the same thing and trying to figure out which one worked best, I always felt like this one worked the best. It wasn't the one that we had to call tech and say it crashed or it wouldn't open, or, because it's huge. It's around the world and everybody's using it. We're just using a small part of it.
For us, I mean, collaboration and growth. I mean, we're dyads. We teach the same course to different students. And so we actually created one Moodle class together. So it's not like, oh, Mr. Kimpton's kids are doing this and Mr. Gilbert's kids are doing this. We're doing a lot of the same things so they can compare exactly. You know, it's not just, well, Kimpton gives everyone A's because he's awesome and Gilbert, well, let's not go there. Safety control and options. We can choose what's open to the public. Yeah, you can go on there and check it out, but there are some activities like you want to log in and see a common formative assessment or whatever. You actually have to log in. And I'm sure maybe you guys have logins, maybe you don't, but et cetera. And then, you know, you can see the answers and see certain things by there. And
I mean, the public could actually go on to, our page is public at first, and then as you go in and try to do things, you start to find out which things you actually have to be a part of our class, and then which things, essentially, like, the parents could go and look at and or do if they wanted to. Obviously, we don't want parents going in and taking quizzes for their kids, but, so we have a lot of control over it, and there's a lot of things out there where we felt like we didn't have as much control or safety, and this has that for sure.
The Strong Future, I think, kind of did that, and students and parents like it, especially ones who sometimes are gone, because we can put little snippets up there of what happened in class and what was going on. So I had a student who pretty much was homeschooled for the whole year, and he kind of followed along on Moodle and knew what was going on. So when I would just talk to his para who visited him, you know, be like, hey, we're kind of doing, oh yeah, he saw that at school, and it's open. I mean, there are kids, it's amazing, because it timestamps you when the kids log in. You know, 2, 3 a.m., they're on there doing stuff, and you're like, I hope you sleep sometime, but at least they're learning.
At least they're doing science.
At least they're doing science, yeah, it's important.
And then on the other side here, the advantages for using Moodle for the students, which is probably what's most important. Yes, it's easy and great for us. Well, it's not always easy, but it's great for us. But that access, like Greg was saying, 24/7, the kids are really busy today. We're really busy. School is no longer like in class. Kids don't want that, first of all. They don't like to be, you know, pigeonholed into, I'm only with you from, you know, 1 to 1:50. This allows them, you know, I've had kids go and take quizzes, you know, after hockey practice on their phone, you know, or they're at the library after school and they feel like they can contribute to class better because they're on their own. They're still a part of class and, you know, answering a question or studying or going over that same presentation that we did in class. They're doing it on their own time. You know, maybe they weren't getting it in class, maybe they weren't paying attention as well. They had a lot of other things going on. They were thinking about their language arts test the next hour. But they can go and access class again anytime that they want, which is great. The instant feedback, we use Moodle, our primary use, other than it being our out-of-class place to be, is for formative and summative assessments. So there's actually, and we'll show you in a little bit, quizzes that we build ourselves and tests and activities, and kids can go and do those outside of class. Sometimes we have them do them in class, and sometimes we have them do them outside of class. And they can take it multiple times. Sometimes we can change the grading of it, which is great. And I forgot where I was going with this. It gives them that instant feedback. They love it. They always ask to take a Moodle quiz as opposed to
How did you
written
get question
quiz.
17 wrong?
And they'll actually talk about like questions, which is great.
Yeah.
I mean, they're talking about, you know, why is it a stratovolcano? I mean, whatever. I mean, that's awesome. And they actually get that instant feedback, and then they want to go and figure out like what the right answer is. For some reason, because it's on a computer and it's not my handwriting, the computer puts up red and tells them something. They want to go in, and they like that. I mean, we all like to get things quickly, but that's why it's a great thing. It goes along, if we're going in that movement of the digital backpack, this would be their science textbook anywhere that they go, for our class at least. And the more classes that start to have this, the more accessibility, the more freedom the kids are going to have to be able to get their resources, and they're learning anytime, anywhere, and how they want it.
Assuming they have access
Yes.
at home or near home, that's another issue.
Yep.
Freedom and responsibility. I mean, everyone likes to do things when they want, how they want, especially if you have a teenager at home or even a fourth grader. And the responsibility of having to do it or not doing it is kind of along the human side of things. Sometimes, oh yeah, I didn't get to that. And it's kind of that, honor code of growing up and having to kind of eat your cake or not eat your cake.
Well, it's a skill that kids are going to need more and more of, because more and more classes in higher education are expecting people to do stuff outside on their own time, they've got to budget their own time, they've got to figure this out and remember, oh, that quiz deadline is at, we usually put it at some reasonable time, but, you know, at 6 PM or 8 PM, or I have until 8 o'clock that next morning. And if they don't remember their time or budget their time, you know, that's another thing you got to learn how to do. And it being online and knowing how to access it and right way to do things and, you know, navigating all those 21st century skills, this forces them to do it. And a lot of them are already there or wanting to do it and pick it up quite quickly. So this is, it doesn't show up too great for you guys, but this is just, we're able to group students as if we were in the classroom with them, although their names are on a screen. So when Greg and I are getting together, and fortunately, because, not to build ourselves up, but we work so well as a dyad, the two of us can look at data and compare our classes. We can compare our groups. We can go in and actually take apart a quiz and see what percentage of students got this wrong. And maybe that's because of the way we taught it. And maybe it's, who knows what the reason is. We get to talk about it and reflect on it. Or, you know, period 4, you know, is not getting this at all. Why are their averages so much lower? We can reflect back and look at what we did and maybe how we taught differently. You know, what kids are in that class and figure out what these things are to improve student learning. So it has a ton of data ability within it. And we've kind of learned that as we go along. And what's nice is you can actually, you know, pull things out and look at them separately. And it does all that pretty much for you. You just have to know how to navigate it.
Without having 500 papers spread out on the
Yeah.
desk, which is nice. Okay. So this is kind of a part of a unit page, and this would be what the left-hand side, what the students would see, operations that are open. I know you can't read them, but different forms and activities and things. So they can go there. This is our first unit that we start the beginning of the year off with, and kind of what's happening. You know, quizzes, pre-assessments, assessments along the way, instructional videos come with questions, handouts, assignment, classwork, places to go like, oh, you're more interested in learning about the law of superposition. Go check out these websites, etc. So, that, I mean, things that can happen in the class and yet outside the class, because when they come to school, I mean, you have them for a limited amount of time, and everyone's a little different, and you gotta work with them to learn, and not just learn whatever the minimum content thing is, but to go above and beyond that. And so some students, they come in and they get it real quick, and you gotta have something to do to enhance that knowledge towards others. And then you have other students that might need a little bit more time and reflective, and they can use Moodle to review something or in class. And so it's kind of like we're the coach in a way, and this Moodle is our playbook, and the students are the players, football analogy, I guess. And so, you know, not every single day are you gonna get a first down with everyone. Sometimes you get, you know, 3 yards, and that's great. Other times they might have a 20-yard play. Sometimes you have a fumble. And Moodle helps us pinpoint because of the data selection that Adam was talking about, so we can go in the next day and, you know, get the fumbles and turn those 3-yard gains into maybe a 5-yard gain. And the 20-yard gains, awesome. How did we get there, et cetera.
They don't always necessarily like how much we can see of what it is that they've done, how long it took them to do it. They got this question right, or they decided to try this question 3 times, and every time they did it, it grades them a little bit differently. It has a lot of abilities. So there might be some of that big brother stuff, but in this case, that's good, because it's those things that we have in the classroom all the time. And it's nice to be able to have a lot of those abilities and control and safety measures and oversight when they're not in our classroom. And then probably go to the next one. So this would be an example of kind of the next endeavor. We're hopping into the second cohort of flipped education, and there's a number of teachers in our building who are in their second year of flipped education. You've probably heard about it. Do I need to explain flipped education?
I would take a minute to do that because it speaks to our professional development efforts.
Okay. Flipped education, and me being, we're very early on in it, but since we're already using Moodle so much, we've essentially kind of been flipped for probably, it sounds weird, we've been flipped for probably a number of years, but this year we're really going to try and flip and take a lot of that time where we'd be up in front of class giving a lecture, instruction, kids are taking notes, you know, kind of the old school way of doing things, and putting that more on the student responsibility. And having them do a lot of that in bits and pieces using Moodle online at home whereas we would usually give them homework to go and do. You know, we teach them something in class and we send them home and they struggle with it and they come back to class and we figure out what to do. Whereas this, we're putting a lot of that instructional, the actual lesson in their hands. They go out there, we ask them to do something with it right then and there online with like a short little quiz or an activity or a question that proves that, one, they did it, and two, we can figure out how well they understand that content or material. And we can know when they're coming in the door, which we're going to learn how to do even better, who's done what, how long it took them. It does all that for us, and they can come into class and we can actually help them with what their issues are, as opposed to, you know, doing that 2 days later after they've struggled through a lab or a activity that they did at home.
And Adam and Greg, you're supported in that effort with the district-supported flipped cohort, which is a professional development model that Sean and Andy helped organize. I don't know if you want to say a word about that, guys, or Sean?
I'm sure Sean could explain it better than I could, but.
Well, I can describe the cohort model that we've developed, and so for the past 2 years, we've been using the cohort model through the flipped education, and then also new literacies, and there's one more. Oh, it's been expanded to elementary flipped now also. So essentially what happened is we survey the staff and find out their interests based on the topic. So for this one, it was flipped education. Invite people to come to an informational meeting. They get some information so that they can make an informed decision about many things. Professionally, whether they're interested in it. Professionally, whether they think they can commit to the time that it's going to take. And then after that presentation, they make a decision of whether or not they're going to jump in. If they jump in, they're provided 20 hours of, that's right, right? Yeah, thank you. 20 hours of summer writing time to develop, or more, to develop the course content based on the approach. So for flipped, that could be creating videos, it could be finding video content, it could be creating assessments. Essentially, we know that it takes more than 20 hours to get this work done. But the approach of the cohort is to give them a running start into the school year. And so they have an opportunity to get started, find out the things that are working for them, find out the things that are pinch points for them as an instructor, so that when the school year starts, they have a place to start to try to implement this piece. And then throughout the school year, there are 4 release days. One of those, which is taken by the district, where I will pull the flipped cohorts, both 1 and 2 together. And then when we pull them all together, I lean heavily on the classroom teachers to do presentations based on that, based on their experience, so that they can communicate to each other the things that are working, because they're the ones that know best. And then the 3 other days are for them to take the time to continue to develop content, come to the ESC, troubleshoot, develop a Moodle course, really what they believe is the next steps based on the approach in the cohort. So that's essentially what our cohort model looks like in Bloomington.
So this here is one of the things that we did over the summer, and this is just a very small fraction of what we did, but it's in it.
I'll hit it then.
Well,
We will watch.
You don't want to watch the whole, well, you might want to go
And
home and
Mr.
watch the whole
Gilbert
thing,
here.
because it's real nice voices on there.
A little bit about what early Earth was like and how it formed.
But, you know, it's a little
Get
kind
ready to go. Chapter 4.5, the early Earth. And the early Earth, well, we got to talk about the Earth is approximately
One of the interesting
4.6 billion years old.
Okay, and they could, you know, I already get that part. I want to get a part later on about,
be our planet.
you know, how the
So,
early
like you
Earth
learned in
formed,
sixth grade.
or what's going on. And so, you know, you go through, you can watch it
it's like a
multiple
skin
times,
of
see what's
rock that
happening,
started
you know,
to
especially
form.
great if
That's
someone's
what
not
gives
there,
us
if you're
the
not
place
understanding it, or if you miss
process to
something.
learn
Go
about
back over a lecture before a test or a quiz.
gradually
or-
moving.
Yep. And then it won't, I doubt it'll work. But then afterwards, they can attempt a quiz, and that's what we were talking about, their formative quiz. A few quick hitter questions, like to look for basic understanding and content knowledge. And then they walk in tomorrow, we already know, Beaverson, he got 0 out of 4 on it. We're going to have to, you know, work with him a little more, what's going on. And maybe sometimes it was, well, I don't have access to it at home, and that was Sean's deal. And, well, okay, let's get it on and do it. You know, Kimpton might have been, well, I got 1 out of 3, but I really didn't get this. And, you know, so you can kind of form the class the next day based on what they've done and how they've performed so far, which hopes continue onward. And that's kind of a little nutshell of beauty.
Yeah.
Next slide. Sure. All right. Oh. All right, I got it.
Okay.
You're on it.
So here's an example of, well, this is what we see. It's really hard during the summer for us to get in and show you what the student would see. But if a student is taking an assessment or an activity where there's actually questions that get immediately graded, which they love, this would be an example of 3 types of rock, metamorphic, igneous, sedimentary, yada, yada, yada. It immediately lights them as, well, not as they're taking it, but once they're done and they hit submit, although they could do it question by question. We don't like that, though. They turn in their quiz and bloop, it just spits it right back at them on the screen. And they love it. It gives them how many right out of how many wrong, their percentage, and then it shows them, particularly like certain questions like this that have 3 parts. It's just a simple matching question. It tells them what it is that they got wrong. We don't usually like to give them the answer because we'll usually give them another attempt to go and figure out what that is. It's very different than the assessments that we actually give in class, which are more written and short answer, a different level. But this gives us a great way to access their basic understanding of certain concepts. And we can actually see, the time, what they did they save it, and then before they actually answered it. So we can actually kind of look into their thinking on a question, which is kind of great when you have a question and you don't understand why all the students are getting it wrong, which usually that's our fault. Well, yes, it's almost always our fault if they're all getting wrong. And we can pinpoint what it is that is. Why is everybody getting this wrong or hesitating? We can go in and look at the statistics. They don't necessarily have that, but they have a nice record of what quizzes they've done, what activities. It's like a running syllabus for a course. That's how it actually started. So if you go and look at our page, even with a public view, it's going to look like a syllabus, just like we got in college or high school. And a lot of kids like it because they can actually keep track of what it is that they've done and not done, which is still a skill that many of them need to learn.
And more importantly, how they improve throughout a unit, because you can sign up many times and take things, et cetera. Let's hit the next slide, please. Okay, so this is us again, and we've you can't see the students, but this was actually people from last year, December, early January, that they were taking things. And you can see the top student, their first number after 7 minutes and 23 seconds, they scored, I think that's an 8 out of 21 questions correct. And you can see, the red ones they got wrong, yellow ones are partially correct, green are awesome, et cetera. And I mean, like for us, the person at the bottom, they finished in 2 minutes and 26 seconds. And they got a 15, okay? I mean, that's pretty fast versus the person at the top took 7:23. Sometimes you'll see someone's in there for like, a minute, and you can tell they just kind of were hitting answers to get the assignment done, but at least they had to hit answers. So it allows us to see, if you go to the Q's at the top, how many students, because it gives us a data profile at the bottom, what % are getting things correct or wrong, and that way we can pinpoint, well, maybe it's something in terms of the learning and the teaching that we did that's preventing the students from getting it or being more successful at things. And that really helps right away the next day, because we can get some of those misconceptions or misideas or lack of communication taken care of.
And it's a great piece to use to talk with students, either at their computer or even up at our computer. We can actually go, 2 weeks back in time, all the way back to September, and look at something and say, well, what is it that you didn't understand about this, and talk about that specific item. They really like it for the ability to go back before a big test and look over things that they've improved on or growth. That's the biggest thing that we're going here for, is the growth. And for instance, I don't know if you can see it, but up the top is a student, says December 12th. It's that same student, the way I did this before the screenshot. Then it's January 10th. So that was a pre and a post on a relatively large unit. It took a month to get through. But they went from an 8 to a 17 out of 21, and they love seeing that. They love seeing that, and they actually, the majority of them do. They like working towards seeing their score going up. Now, some of them are just going for points, and you'll always have students like that, but some of them really feel proud and like to be able to see and identify, and we're teaching them that metacognition through using this as a teaching and class tool.
And then it's the second, well, it's okay, you can leave it here. It's a secondary difficult thing, like, okay, Adam's the student, so Adam, which one of, we call them learning targets, they kind of correlate to the standards, but which one of the learning targets, are you having difficult with? Because you gotta, if you just keep telling someone something, teach a person to fish and they won't go hungry, give them a fish, they'll come back and beg tomorrow. So Adam, by the end of the year, is hopefully getting good at knowing, okay, if I look at my Moodle results, because all the questions have a target associated with them, I realize I'm not getting target 3, which is dealing with what are the 3 types of rock families or whatever. So then we can spend more detailed time, and they can spend more detailed time, maybe going back through Moodle and checking out a video that we've created, or going to a link, or looking at pages 72 to 73 in the book, et cetera. But by the end of taking, this is that same test, but with all the kids on it, or quiz, you can kind of see how many students and what their different scores are. And of course, everyone loves the anonymous comparison, because you can say, I got a 21, even if you got a 3 or whatever. But, you know, students kind of see where they are on there, and then you can show, here's where you were on the pre-test, and here's how we did on the post-test. You know, as a big turnaround, what's going on? What are some challenges you can take care of, you know, to help, you know, some of the students who got 3, 4, 5 out of 21 right, et cetera. You know, sometimes having things anonymous to them is good to see and compare, because, you know, nobody wants to go, oh, hey, that's Johnny up there, and he's number 7259, and he got 3 out of 21. You know, that's not so cool. And then we get together at our dyad, and we can get rid of the anonymity. Is that a word? Anonymousness? That might be a word.
Anonymity?
Yeah, that's the word, maybe. And
So
C,
we're sharing a course, but even if we're sharing a course, so it's really easy to do. So I could look at my bar graph and he can look at his bar graph, or we could look at them at the same time. And if all of his students did, you know, wicked good on an assessment, and all of mine, you know, may look more like a bell curve, which isn't always bad, but in this case, if his looks like that and mine's a bell curve, I need to talk to him about maybe what is he doing differently, or how did he teach the, you know, just all of these things that a lot of times if you're doing it the old way, it's difficult to get that information to talk about.
imagine you're getting
Like when you're
MCA
actually
and cult
doing it.
data constantly relayed to you. I mean, that's what this is. It's data. Let's go. Oh, yeah, and then there's some other kind of fun things that you can do, and sometimes they work awesome, and other times they don't work awesome, but that's kind of life sometimes. So, you know, I threw out a question, and I actually put this on August 20th, and I had last year's students respond to it out of the blue in the middle of summer because they were checking stuff out. I don't
They're
know
still
why.
going to our page. That's
Yeah,
pretty
they're still going to our page, but I had other students respond, and it was a review question that I was getting ready for this year for. But so sometimes things happen, and you're blindsided by the students just being online and checking stuff out, and just amazed as to what can happen just by such a simple thing as throwing a question, how old's the earth? Or, you know,
And there's, what's nice about, and we're going to experiment with that even more, it's called a forum. You know, those students that don't like to talk in class, many of them will be able to go online and talk a lot, probably more than you want. But this gives them that opportunity to still contribute to class and say, hey, I do know something, or this is what I think, whereas in class, they wouldn't say a word. And we get to learn a lot that way too. We haven't used that a ton yet, although there's still a lot of Moodle that we have, and there's a lot that's being made, that it has a lot of possibilities. So, and one thing I would like to say is being a part of the one-to-one pilot, well, now 2 years ago is when it finished up, and then those 3 years that we did it, that without having that one-to-one contact with the kids, laptop kid, it would have been really difficult to get a lot of this off the ground and get them to buy into it. And fortunately, we still have a significant chunk. I have laptop cart in my room. Well, they're gradually, the number's going down gradually, but still enough for a significant number of the students to be on a laptop and working when they need to, particularly if they don't have it at home. And with Chromebooks as a possibility, and for sure it sounds like for sixth grade, I see a lot of possibilities, and I feel even more confident that if one-to-one with Chromebooks becomes a reality, you know, on into the future and for the rest of the time, I mean, eventually everything will be digital, and this won't be like necessarily skills that will be new and having to be taught the students. If they're coming to us in 8th grade with those skills already because they had them in 6th and 7th, and we can skip over the training of that or only reinforce that training that happened before, it'll be amazing of what it is that they can and what we could do with them in and out of the classroom.
and Moodle, I mean, it's technology. It's how you present it, what you do with it, and, you know, it's just a gateway. It's a gateway to freedom, gateway to learning, you know, and the more doors you open, the more pathways there are for people to go and students to learn and just become better individuals. And the one thing that it doesn't replace is you still got to have some, I mean, science class, so we're still having labs and all these things in there. It's definitely not, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but I'm saying it anyway, it's definitely not an online course. You know, you're still going to need the human contact, and kind of like Adam said, you know, you need someone, hey, I see you're doing this, you know, let's check out this, and to split people up, et cetera, and get that human touch in there. It's not a, I don't know what the right word is, it's not a replacement for Adam, our Moodle course, because, you know, it's an addition. It's really the gateway to students to be able to do stuff that's not just in that X number of time you see them in the school day or they see you. It kind of broadens the whole idea. I don't know if that's technically digital backpack.
There still has to be that good teacher behind the scenes, or it's kind of like the Wizard of Oz, don't pay attention to the person behind the curtain. But, you know what I'm saying?
I know what you're talking about. Hopefully everybody
You
else
have
does.
to have those teachers there doing that still, otherwise it's just a computer teaching kids, and that's not what this is at all. They know it's us behind there and trying to make these opportunities for them to learn in different ways.
Just very quickly, you know, when the two elementary teachers came, Holly and Kelsey, to talk about their experience with Flipped, I think what you heard surface more than the technology that they were using was their approach to teaching and their passion for teaching. Remember that Kelsey said at one point, what this has allowed us to do was all of the great things we knew we wanted to do, but didn't have the time to do. And I think what you heard both Adam and Greg describe was the same thing. They're given a set of tools. They're given a structure, the dyad structure, which is our PLC at the middle school level. They're given a set of tools and support and time to use that. They apply formative assessment and summative assessment to figure out the best methods to reach all of the students. And so our whole piece with the Next Technology for Learning is that the technology should be virtually transparent. And really, it should get out of the way of the great teaching that the Bloomington Public Schools teachers want to do, and that these two gentlemen just really described. If you, the passion that comes through in what they're doing, you know, we're all Minnesota humble, so they pull back from it a little bit in ways, but I can hear, it's an honor for me to listen to them, it excites me to listen to them talk about the ways that they use these tools to do better with our students, to enhance our students' learning, to give them greater opportunities to learn, and then to help them know where they are, again, in their pathways. So they're not coming to a summative assessment, the assessment at the end of the unit, and it's a surprise what grade they got on it. They've been coached throughout the entire unit by these two gentlemen with the support of this tool, which is our digital content presented in Moodle. With that,
That was a nice summary.
thank you.
Yeah, so what are our next steps? So for this upcoming school year 13-14, we'll be focusing on middle school digital curriculum. So what that means is we'll be facilitating collaboration between the middle schools in creating core courses in Moodle. So that 3-ring binder that Sean talked about, we'll be facilitating that for the district's middle school core curriculum. Starting with 6th grade, because we sort of want to start small, learn from that, and then expand that later in the winter to 7th and 8th grade. And what we mean here, you know, these gentlemen have spent several years in Moodle, so what do we mean by that digital course in Moodle? So what we're talking about is a standards-aligned digital curriculum, so it's sort of that replacement for the printed textbook that we have now. And then teachers are able to personalize that, just like you see how they have personalized their Moodle course. So it's, the foundation is the standards aligned with the digital content, and then teachers are able to then personalize that for their students and for their instruction. So that's the focus at middle school. At the high school,
Just, and Andy didn't mention, so we have, there is a professional development plan in place for both 6th grade and 7th and 8th grade for this year. We have that plan in publication in a variety of places. If it's helpful, we can send that along again to demonstrate the time that is being provided to teachers to help develop these skills, both in using Moodle, but then to think about how digital content changes the way they can do certain things in the classroom. So I just wanted to mention that.
good point.
And then at the high school, so taking what we learned from the middle school, obviously fewer courses at the middle school. There will be more courses and more preps potentially at the high school level. So taking what we've learned from that and starting a spring pilot. And then focusing again later, high school would be more focused on, and then the 14-15 school year. And then at the elementary level, really working within the curriculum review process. So we've just recently adopted new social studies standards. So taking those standards and, for example, using our web quests for our 5-star research project, redoing those to fit the alignment of the new standards and making that into a digital Moodle course. So at the elementary, working through that review cycle as it makes sense. And then I'll just mention that we're also in a collaborative project with District 287 and many other districts across the state for open education resources. So they're also working on creating digital content, and we are a partner in that.
With that, we can open up to questions from the board.
Chair. I think Chair Culver is speechless right now. I'm surprised I've been sitting this long.
That's a lot of information. I tried hard to follow along as to how that would be implemented in terms of...
He's on the Moodle page.
Director Bergstrom.
Yes, first let me say thank you for coming. Tim, Andy, Adam, Greg, and Sean. Adam and Greg, I want to go back, I want to be in 8th grade, and I want to take a class from you guys.
Come on down.
So,
It'd be dangerous if we were actually both up in front of class at the same time. Fortunately, they put us on different floors, but.
I love the excitement and the enthusiasm. I know I would have learned a lot from you.
Thank you.
Just, I have 2 questions, and they may or may not own a long answer. So I'm interested in, are there any that you're hearing, any concerns from the teachers? That's one, and any concerns from the students? Do they come to you and say, what do they say, teachers and students?
I have heard concerns from teachers just in doing anything new, particularly with technology. It can be scary sometimes, particularly when you've done things before and worked really hard at them and got it going, and then it was taken away, or just kind of, it didn't turn into anything. We have had a number of those things happen, so I do feel like there are, people out there, colleagues who are a little tentative about Moodle, and they have also sometimes see how quickly we've taken on things, and we might jump into technology faster than other teachers, and they may think that they have to be where we are, year 1 or in 2 months or 6 months when Chromebooks or whatever it is. They might be worried. But I think they know that it's the time, and we just have to make sure we do a good job in supporting them and giving them time. And then also, what I always try to do, and I learned as a CT years ago, is to, make them realize that you don't have to go from, 0 to 60. You use it as you need it, and you use it as your students need it, and you develop it as time goes. I think if we can make sure to do that and say that to our teachers, it'll be a lot. It won't seem like such a big bite to chew, because, it's baby steps. If people look at what we do and think that they have to do that in November, nobody's going to do it. And so it's all how you deliver, that training and the message of what the future's like.
The trainings we've had over the past 5-6 years now, special development time, et cetera, to work on this in addition to time we put in on our own. And that's been very important, because sometimes, yeah, I got this question, Andy, something's not going on, can you, and it happens, and so you bring up a good point. Some people are a little nervous about that. And secondly, I know that we've been talking, and Sean and I just kind of whisper a little bit, is when we talk about our Moodle page, we take a lot of ownership in that, and everything is kind of created from scratch. But it seems like we're going to have some like intro template, so if you kind of want to get one that's somewhat already out or designed, where you can put your own coursework in there, or your own units, or learning targets, standards, whatever you choose, that way it's not, some people get real scared of, there's a blank slate, go for it. I mean, teachers, parents, people, period. Others love it because they can create what they want.
Yeah, it sounds like there's going to be a lot of framework built into,
And the student question, and this is the first thing that jumped into my mind right away, is in the past, sometimes access outside of the building has been a challenge. So you don't have access to a computer or the internet, or yours is still running Windows 93 or whatever and isn't quite up to snuff, or you're still on, vintage slow-ski dial-up or whatever. Loading the video will take a long, you get the point, time. And so that has been a concern. And as a building, we've been addressing that. I know other buildings address it. Sometimes we have the loaner program. Sometimes we've purchased internet for students or their families, et cetera. And I know, because I've been kind of reading, I live in the district, so read the kind of stuff about how there's the Cubus and there's getting the partnership together, and now things are getting put in, internet capabilities in different apartment complexes, which I mean, amazing and awesome. But that's definitely a concern, and that's been a concern since Adam had the 1-to-1 program, one computer for every student. I had the 1-to-5 program, and it was kind of a concern back then.
so computers didn't go home, so
Yeah.
there was a disjoint with that, but.
And you don't want to create a have and a have-not education society. And so that's part of the cognizant thing, so-and-so doesn't have access at home or nearby, or they can't, come early, stay after. In the buildings, we've been lucky enough, we have academic seminar, so students can come twice a week and kind of, for is it half hour? Half hour, get a little bonus time during the school day, et cetera, especially if they don't have internet out there, as well as some of our loaner programs. But that is, right now, it's a pitfall,
We
to
do
be
take,
honest with you.
it does come up on a pretty regular basis, but a lot of times we just have those conversations with those students and the families about ways to get around that issue, because no matter what, in the future, you're gonna need to have access to this somehow. And there's places you can go, after school, before school. I'll make sure to make myself available, certain day after school, or we can talk about, public library access. And there seems to be always a way that the issue gets resolved, and it doesn't necessarily require, buying internet for that family, or we figure out something. Or we also are flexible in how we set up, the time that quiz or activity would be open, or there's always ways to accommodate.
I would just, to point out or remind us that in the Next Technologies for Learning plan, we deal with that issue in concrete manners. And so through partnerships, either with particular apartment buildings, through the Hennepin County Library, through our PUC exploration, a whole variety of ways that Bloomington is attempting to address this issue, that access issue, in real concrete ways. We are done surveying our students, we are done describing the problem, and in Bloomington, we're attempting to do something about it.
Did you want us to address anything else or more questions?
No, those were very informative. I appreciate you sharing. Thank you.
I'll just note, we will be coming back, our team, and talking about the other two components. So I think, I'm not sure if that's in September, October, but we'll be coming back to talk about access.
Director Hibbs? Well, I'd also like to thank you, and thank you especially for making the kind of presentation that I think the school board really needs on this topic. It's really helpful to kind of get into the details and understand that, so appreciate you taking the time.
It wasn't too informal, but.
I know you guys.
Used to 14-year-olds, so this is very different. Sorry.
First question is just, so all those analytics that you showed us, those are built into Moodle. Those aren't things that teachers are going to have to program or?
No, that's one thing that, especially when we got into this formative and summative assessment movement, I don't know if that's what you'd call it, and realizing, wow, this thing's collecting a lot of data, and we just started putting more and more into it. But we didn't have to put in any of those formulas. It does it for you. As long as you set up your quiz right and you know what kind of data you want to get on the end, and that you learn as you go and through, a few mistakes or somebody showing you what to do better.
We didn't write any algorithms or anything like
No,
that.
it's all built in for it.
Another question that comes to mind, and if you've watched the school board over the last couple of months, I've asked it a lot, and that is, kind of goes to the whole notion of time management skills. A lot of folks have some concerns that as we're giving kids these Chromebooks and iPads, that they get distracted and go down different rabbit holes, and it takes them 4 hours to do what should have taken them 30 minutes. Did you see any of that during the pilot? And as teachers, are you developing strategies to help kids with that kind of thing?
Yes?
Yeah, yes.
The short answer?
And it's just another behavior that you have to manage. It just, it's with the computer as opposed to, doing something with your notebook you shouldn't be doing. And, managing those behaviors is also them learning a skill that they need to have. Because, the more freedom they have as they get older, the more, we have open conversations about this, and we have contracts that they have to sign and agreements, and, it puts a lot on their plate, and they have to realize, there's privileges and there's consequences, and, it's kind of like parenting about technology, and it comes down to that, using it the right way, at the right time, and how you're being asked to use it that's one of the expectations,
And part of it is, it's not a formal learning standard, it's the trying to help someone with their organization and time management. Whether it's digital or whether it's, and we still have paper agenda books, I know high schools do, and, elementary schools, it's how do you work on something yourself so that okay, I have lacrosse practice tonight, then I go to dance, then I go to church, and I want to go see my little sister, and then I should go to bed and get some beauty rest because I need it, and where in there am I going to work on my language arts or whatever? Whether it's digital or not, a lot of those issues are still prevalent, and I know we kind of addressed this, and those of you who have parents know that time, the older you get, from a kid standpoint, the less of it there is, even though the older you get, the more busy you become, and you realize that when you finally get mature, whatever that word means, but I think I'm there. And so that's kind of part of it, is trying to help people along the way, help themselves in the organizational side of things. This is the digital organization side. And, choices, like Adam said, are going to be made. Sometimes it took you, 20 minutes to watch our 3-minute video. Were you doing something else maybe along the way? And the same thing that happened, I'm sure one or two of us did this in school, was we doodle on paper or write a note, etc. When I first started years ago, girls loved spiral notebooks, and they'd pass them. You're not a girl, but you work. And they'd slide them to their buddy, and then their buddy would write a page, and they'd slide them, and they'd pass these things. It's a similar but technology difference, if you will, to helping learn the softer goals of development.
Does that answer your question, or were you thinking more of like what are those things that we do to keep them from?
Well, I guess I hope that we're going into this being proactive about trying to help kids that way. Because other districts, I know people in other districts, and I hear these parents tearing their hair out because their kids are going to bed way too late because it takes them so long to do their homework on an iPad, because they go and they watch YouTube videos, and they text message with their friends, and they take funny pictures of themselves, and then somewhere after about 3 hours of that, they do their 20-minute paragraph that they were supposed to write.
Yeah, and that actually comes up a lot. It particularly did at conferences when we were in the one-to-one pilot, and you have those conversations about, well, one, a lot of those things are happening whether they had an iPad or not, because they're doing it on their phone while they do their homework. But it just comes down to coaching as a teacher and as a parent, are they working in the correct place? Are they using it for what they're supposed to? How can you monitor them? or set up times, and it becomes a lot to talk about, but I mean, I don't think necessarily the technology is the piece that is the problem, as much as maybe it's the thing that people, they say that's the reason why, when really it's the students' decisions of what they're doing with the device as opposed to having I don't know if that makes sense. having the
Although,
device.
you know, a device like an iPad and to a certain extent a Chromebook, I think we're designed with entertainment in mind, right? I mean, so yeah, they have clear educational applications too, but I think all of us understand that, you know, we're all trying to figure out how to use technology efficiently, because the way Facebook and all those things are set up, they want you to go down the rabbit hole. I mean,
Right
that's what's intended. So, you know, I know people struggle with it at work, and you read articles in the Wall Street Journal about, you know, productivity in the workplace, because they know, you know, around Christmas time, people aren't working on their computers, they're shopping, right?
March Madness time.
And that, I mean, that just, I mean, right there, it's in the workplace right now. So, I mean, if they're not having any exposure to figuring out this issue as an 8th grader or a 6th grader or a 4th grader, and they're just gonna then figure it out in high school or college. I mean, imagine if they go to college and it's their first time to, you know, have some of these things. It's, hopefully the next few generations can have it a little bit more, the novelty will have worn off, and they will have been able to figure out some of it because of their amount of exposure that, you know, there's that time and that place. But yeah, it is a significant challenge.
You know, I know in Olson in particular that Mr. Lee and Ms. Carafel were working with a lot of kids on time management skills, and I just think this is another case where we're going to have to really pay attention and try to be proactive, because the benefit then is kids do know how to use these devices, you know, effectively.
And one thing, well, not one thing, but another great thing about our one-to-one pilot that we did, you know, previously as the 8th grade teams, is it really provided us with a ton of insight and learning on the fly of all these things that we wish we had known, you know, the first year, all these things that we figured out by the second year, and then by the third year, you know, each year we figured out more and more, and we already have those things as 8th grade teachers, and I would be more than happy and hope that they would provide time for us to share some of that, or let the 6th grade teachers know that we are a great resource because we've already been one-to-one. Granted, not with Chromebooks, but they're going to be using Chromebooks in many of the same ways that we used our laptops.
And that was actually my next question is, so, you know, you guys, I think, sound like you're really into technology, so you're excited about the prospect of doing this, but as, you know, the response to Dick's question, there might be some people who are a little more hesitant, and I'm just wondering, as we roll this out kind of full scale at these different grade levels, what that professional development will look like in terms of trying to capitalize on what you learned going up the learning curve so that others don't have to do that.
Well, I'm assuming that will be used again in some shape or form.
Right, exactly.
No, this is the last time your expertise is going to be utilized.
Adam and
done.
Greg,
We're done.
sitting here.
This is our last.
You are lucky to have them here. Their staff members.
I know that.
Get to use them frequently, right? So they're at the site, and they are the resources within that site at Olson. They know the students, they know the staff members. These are just two examples at one site from one grade level of the people that we will be, again, I'll say, leaning on to help communicate the message of how to do these things. Adam, I really took notice of Adam and Greg at a staff meeting when they went up and described their Moodle course. Moodle can be a bear to describe. And if you're a technology-centric person and you're very excited about it, you can lose people rapidly if you're describing something like Moodle in a bear. Your enthusiasm comes forth and you use words like just click here, just did this, and it doesn't help. So what I witnessed in these two was their ability to communicate to their staff. I watched at the staff meeting the staff members, the entire staff, lean forward, and the results of that meeting then were people were asking for additional time to learn about Moodle. I want to learn a few things about Moodle. So they are, all of the teachers within the system who have this experience are a key element to the success of this going forward. And so a lot of that, That's just how, that's the way to do it. That's the proper way to do it, to have peers sharing with peers, to supporting peers. The district putting in infrastructure and time to release teachers and other ways to support them so that they have the time to take those baby steps.
Did we debrief at the end of the one-to-one pilots so that we captured lessons learned?
Oh, we could just talk to Fravor and, no. We have, all we'd have to do is sit down as an 8th grade team and, I mean, we have things written down and just built into our.
Every building had, I mean,
A
every middle
pilot.
school, I should say, building had a grade level that had a 1-to-1 program or a 1-to-5 program or at Oak Grove, a take-home program. So there's similar trials and tribulations at all buildings that definitely middle school-wide could be shared relatively easily.
We do an update capture of that, certainly pulling out anything we miss. But when John Weiser, our Executive Director of Technology, served in the position, he did a really nice job of capturing summary data. You know, we worked with Dr. Agemeyer on a formal capture of that, and then as we geared up for NTL, you know, we try to apply lessons learned and build that into the design. And of course, it's an iterative process. As a part of that, of course, we do the pre-survey work, too, as we try to capture that data. So 237 staff members replied to that survey as we prepared to launch our work on NTL and to determine if this was an effort that might go forward. Of those 237 folks responding to the question, I support Bloomington significantly increasing the use of digital content. 92% agree or somewhat agree. And I support shifting from carts and labs models to Bloomington providing digital devices per student. 87% of staff members agree or somewhat agree. So all of that will be collated and isn't going to sit frozen, but will be, you know, in an updated fashion harvested from those 3 data sources and applied to the model. But it's just like they described in Moodle. It's a formative process. So we constantly need to collect data from multiple sources to triangulate, to update the model so we can capitalize on lessons learned.
All right. So here's my last question, and it's kind of a hard one, perhaps, but you guys are science teachers, so it
Is it a science question?
shouldn't be trouble for you. I'm hoping at some point I'm going to get the answer to this question kind of district-wide from John Weiser and Dave Heisted, but,
Are we allowed to give answers for other people or just our own answers?
well, you'll understand in a minute. So, you know, I think given the investment that we're going to be making in this and the fact that we'll be making a continual investment in this, presumably, that the district needs to have a way to measure effectiveness of this investment in technology. And so I'm hoping that at some point there will be some metrics around that. But what I'm interested in is, you know, I think we need metrics around, are we really getting what we want to get out of it as far as student growth goes? But I think we also might need to understand, are we getting, are teachers getting out what we want them to get out of it? And are they coming up the learning curve the way we need them to? And so I'm not expecting you to answer for the district, but I am interested in any insights you might have about what a metric designed to get at that might look like.
Well, I know, based on, I feel like what I say is based on the one-to-one pilot, and I'm sure Sean and John can add to this, but I've tried to find a lot of, you know, research out there, and it seems like it's a really hard, can you hear me? It's a really hard thing to assess with like actual, you know, if you try to see how technology affects student test scores, it's not necessarily a clear, like a test one day or over 3 days, and you're trying to figure out if exposure to laptops one-to-one is the key to test scores or student achievement. It's a really hard thing to assess, and I felt like I had a hard time assessing it myself, as, you know, what is it that's leading to student success or lack of success. And engagement would be probably an easier thing to assess, but engagement is a really hard thing to put.
I was going to say, raise your hand if you use technology at work. Oh, come on, get it up. Okay, I mean, it's a metric though, but imagine if we said, hey, you know, we're not going to give you an opportunity or that gateway to learning how to use technology to benefit. Now, granted, is everything like Moodle per se, is that what you're doing where you work using technology? No, but that can all operate and use or have the students use that to help them communicate with each other, learn about how to be more productive themselves, learn about where their strengths and weaknesses are, what to do with it through proper coaching in a way. And the data metrics is tough to get, but imagine, I mean, our students right now, I mean, they were, Al Gore invented the internet, I've been told, I don't know, I read that on the internet, I don't know, I don't think he really did, but, you know, it's been around, well, I was born before the internet, he wasn't, but I was, and it's been around, it's not going away. I mean, computers, laptops, technology, my 3 children, you know, 4th, 2nd, and first day at ELA at Hillcrest today, so 3-year-old, I mean, they're immersed in it. And if we aren't, you know, if we're back on slate and chalk, and I'm not comparing slate and chalk to what we're doing here at all, but if you aren't keeping on top of what's going on, other people out there would start seeing that. And what I mean by out there are families who are looking to Bloomington educationally and looking elsewhere educationally and being like, you know, you don't want to end up teaching in the 21st century using constantly outdated tools. Do they always make for better test scores? That was the part I can't recall, but in the end of the one-to-one program with Jim Engemeyer, it wasn't statistically an improvement or a non-improvement. And I don't know where those results are, but they're somewhere, but it also told about a question. I remember, you know, as the students, do you feel like you are better able to use and support, you know, internet tools, et cetera, for your education and life goal? And that was one of the questions that I know students in a self-survey, you know, were way high in yesing on, or 5 out of 5 or 4 out of 5 or whatever it was.
A lot of
that's an off the record. I don't have any of that data in front of me, and that's going back a couple of years in my career.
The qualitative, you know, survey where students were interviewed or were answering surveys and rating themselves 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and, you know, we could rate them as well, really supported the one-to-one. But when it comes to trying to show its effectiveness on test scores, it's really, I mean, it's really hard because the tests aren't really testing them on their tech skills. The tests are, you know, like our tests aren't testing them on how well they can use the computer. It's testing them, well, in some shape or form it is, but it's really actually testing them on the content that we're, you know, trying to teach them about. So there's a lot, I mean, there's a lot of questions that I even have about how you assess, you know, the effectiveness of it, other than observation and survey.
I think I'm going to make an extrapolation. I think that these 2 gentlemen, it's difficult to come up with the metrics. I think if we can come up with the metrics and figure out the way to measure that, we'll be one of the first people to do that as far as what you're looking for. The intangibles of something like this is these gentlemen are sharing their work towards formative assessment, how they're using the tools to form their teaching strategies in class to teach better to all of the students in class. And all of that was ignited and spurred through the one-to-one project because they had that time. So we can look at them and say, is their Moodle course a highly engaging, effective teaching tool? And I would argue it is. And so that, how do you measure that? That immeasurable, I think, is what we're looking for and what we're suggesting NTL is about. So continuing to deepen the foundation that we have, or firm the foundation we have, and allow teachers to build upon that so they can do the things like use formative data, work with their PLC time, their dyad time, to improve their teaching and instruction. The teaching and instruction is what leads to different results. It's not the technology, it's what the technology allows in the teaching and instruction that leads to the different results. So you know, that doesn't answer the question. I wish I had an answer. I wish I could share with you a direct answer in that, but I think that's the essence of it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Director Corman.
Yes, Greg and Adam, thanks again for bringing that very detailed presentation.
Hopefully not too detailed.
No, that's great. I wanted to ask first, how many times a week do you use Moodle in your curriculum?
It varies on depending what unit we're in and where in the unit, if that makes sense. All of our units through Moodle, kind of one of the first things they do is take a pretest. So they get a self-assessment on, having not even started the unit, like what's going on, take it, what do you know, what do you don't know? Because some students have an amazing amount of knowledge and they love space and love the planets. And, it's kind of fun to differentiate some with them. But after that, two to three, as a resource, it's there all the time because of the links, et cetera. But in terms of using, 2 to 3, depending, on average, sometimes 1, sometimes 3.
Well, and that doesn't, what I can't keep, well, I could keep track of, but it'd take a really long time, is how much the kids are actually going and using it, not just necessarily as, a quiz or an activity or watching a video, but it would take, we could do it, but it would take a really long time. We could go and see how much they're using it just to go and look at the assignment. They had to, because we're not really, well, we are making copies, but not nearly as much as we used to because it's all out there. So if you include all of that interaction, or going and looking at a study guide with a friend, or their parents are going online and looking at, X, Y, and Z with their student, it's probably used, I know some students use it every day.
Right.
It's kind of a paradigm shift. It's,
Okay.
Paper text versus online.
That's
So
pretty much
trying not to pile both on, because that's,
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I had a question similar to the question that Mr. Hibbs had, and I understand you're not working on, data and all that. My question is more, you as educators who have, with several years of experience now educating students and also educating 2 different generations of kids. What do you think about, or what differences have you seen between, before technology and now technology in relation to the attitude that the students have towards learning, and also, this including students who are coming from the diverse backgrounds, and, even though they have some access issues. What have you seen in students in all this period of time, and what is their attitude? Is it positive, or, and what is the attitude towards learning and academics?
well, one thing, generally positive.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll have a new student or a student who moves, and, we're fortunate enough in 8th grade that they've been using things in 7th and 6th as an individual student, or used to logging on, or using Bloomington apps, et cetera, or whatever. But sometimes we'll get a new student or someone who hasn't used it, and it's amazing how many other kids, show sympathy is not the right word, because they're there helping them. Oh, no, here's what you got to do, and this is how you learn to bookmark. Now get them up on your bar, and if you bookmark these pages, that will really help. And that, sharing excitement between peers, that doesn't have anything to do with your learning standards, et cetera. But, making connections is important in a different way. And sometimes, you have Adam's been using technology and I haven't, because I just came here and don't know what's going on. And having some of that sharing is really neat to see. And the second thing is, I don't know, a couple years ago, we surveyed, well, we used to do the survey, how many of you have TVs in your house? How many of you have TVs in your bedroom, okay? Well, we ought to switch that to how many of you guys have internet access in your house? How many of you guys have basically your own smartphone, tablet, et cetera? And the population of younger people having access to it keeps going up. And therefore, they're used to it. If you give them that, and I know Hibbs is going to love hearing this, but if you give them, they know how to distract themselves real good. Or go, oh, check out this YouTube, because there are lots of kids that want to go on and show YouTube's greatest crotch hits or whatever with baseball bats and weird stuff like that. But it's kind of, working, that's not really what we're here for. You know, we aren't going on to YouTube's greatest wipeouts or whatever. And working into what's going on so they can share with each other, because they're, as a whole, or generally speaking, very used to online tools and the internet. So it's as
They're
used to
not-
as growing up, me
they
going
don't
to
hesitate.
encyclopedia or the Dewey Decimal System. When I, you know, I mean,
They don't hesitate with anything that you give them that's I mean, as soon as there's a problem, that's what they need help on, is problem solving, but that's obviously one of our jobs. There's a lot that they do know, there's a lot that they think they know, and there's a lot that they still need to know. And those are, I mean, this provides that opportunity, just like anything. Where are you in your technology skills, and how well can you use that to help your learning? But I would say each year, since I started teaching in 2004, and then particularly once I started with the laptop pilot, each year I'm noticing just, I think it's awesome because of my teaching. I can't take the tech out, even though the one-to-one's not there. I'm still doing all that stuff somehow, even though it's not truly one-to-one. But each year, the students are coming with less apprehension about if they have a tech problem. Some kids like to have a problem because then they have something to figure out, or they know that, you know, their friend can figure it out with them, or they can help their friend, and like he was saying. So, I mean, each year it jumps, I would say, significantly with how much readiness that a large majority of them have, but they still have a lot
and
academically that they need to know of how to use
we
technology.
used to run this thing for 4 years called boot camp at the beginning, where kind of you make sure everybody has some of these basic things going on, and then new students, you know, someone moves in October, January, whatever, they kind of get a little mini boot camp just to help them out. And that's,
We call it tech reboot, 'cause, well, anyways. But
I don't know, we're gimmicky like that.
But that would be something that we would totally share with, like, the sixth grade teachers that are getting the Chromebooks. You know, what did we develop year 1, year 2, and year 3 with Tech Reboot Camp, where the first week of school, you know, here's your computer, these are things that you're gonna need to know how to do, and it's like a checklist, you know, converting files, you know, attachments and downloading, and how to access this on the web as opposed to that, and correct searches. I mean, there were so many things that they didn't necessarily know how to do because they haven't had to do it. And then once they have it, they could have that walking in the door with us. You know, that would be great.
And those are things you never, I mean, back in the 90s when I was teaching, and we had the classroom set of books, you never had to deal with that, if it make, you know, I mean, so there are trade-offs, because, and, you know, like Kib said, there's lots of rabbit holes out there. And I'm really excited. A few years ago, we kind of went from having a restrictive internet search, whatever it's called, to a least restrictive one, and people were panicking. Oh no, the kids are just going to be on all these nasty sites all over. And it really hasn't been that big of a problem. I mean, you know, so that's
Not
at
all,
least,
at least.
well, yeah, I mean, I guess they're also good at hiding things too, but
And
they're teenagers.
when Sean had the 4 techie things up there with Moodle and Google and Oodle and Boodle, but when we're using the Google, I noticed a significant jump just last year. So last year I felt like was our second, like, hardcore year with it. And the year before that, everybody was just kind of playing around with it. There's still a lot of people just playing around with it. But I noticed a significant jump in students' ability to organize things on their Google account, emailing me, which is great, usually. And then if I have them hand in most of their, like, any written assignments or projects, we have them hand that in digitally, and it's just all on the web. And sharing it with us so we can see it in progress. And I felt like I didn't have to really teach that at all last year, and they were like, yeah, can I just send it to you as a Google Doc? Yes. Whereas 2 years ago, they would have said, what are you talking about? So
Thank you.
hopefully Moodle can be like that. Let's get on the move.
Is there anything further? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep,
for
thanks for
time.
listening to our brief presentation.
Brief. We will continue to look forward to having other presentations about the use of technology in the classrooms this year. So I appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you for your time and support.
I don't know how to work PowerPoint, sorry. Oh, thanks.
So I see our people involved with the next report might wish to approach the table. And that is our early childhood kinder prep report. And since I was wrong about who is going to be at the table with the last group, I'll ask Tom to introduce people himself and take over as our moderator here. If you would, Tom Holton, please.
Thanks, Chair Culver, members of the board, Superintendent Fujitaki, and members of the listening office audience. Before we get into the official presentation, Chair Culver asked if we would show a video tonight that some of you may have seen, but I think it makes a nice transition if you remember a week ago when you saw the presentation on learning supports. And we get into the official presentation tonight about kinder prep. That is one of our levels of learning for many of our children now in Bloomington. And we'll talk more specifically about that program. But about 3 years ago, we created this video in Bloomington, and it tells a story about the compelling reasons of why it is so important as we develop children along the pathway of reaching that critical milestone of reading at grade level by 3rd grade. And the things we do both as an academic institution as well as working with the community to put all of those systems in place that assure all of our learners are reaching that critical milestone. So even before I do the introductions, we'll start with that video. So I think you see some common themes in there when we talk about academic and other interventions, our pathways, all students, personalized data, community engagement, family engagement. And so we're going to narrow the focus tonight, but I think it was a great call for Chair Culver to ask us to start out our presentation tonight with that video. So on to the formal report tonight. I am going to turn the speaking over to the experts that I brought along with me. Mary Mitschke, the Kinder Prep Program Coordinator, Judy Bohr, who many of you may recognize, Jody, I'm sorry. I've got a wife named Judy, and it's getting late past my bedtime. And if you don't recognize, Jody was one of the many fine early childhood teachers in our systems that make it happen in the classroom every day, and the one that we chose when Secretary of Arnie Duncan came from Washington to visit Bloomington to see the fine work that's happening across all of our district. But Jody is one of the finest, and we were really pleased to be able to have the commissioner from the state as well as from the national office come and visit. And then always our head researcher, David Heisted, will conclude our presentation. Purpose of our presentation tonight, again, is to talk specifically about the Kinder Prep program. We have a large early childhood program. We try to differentiate our interventions based on what students and families need. And Mary will talk about the specifics of who we serve and how many we serve. But this is one of the interventions aimed at a particular slice of our population to ensure that they're on that pathway of reading by third grade and then college and career ready. So we'll look at the scale-up work of the Kinder Prep program that the school board in Bloomington has been so graciously funded. We'll look at the day in the life of a Kinder Prep student. To many of us, play by 4-year-olds or learning by 4-year-olds just looks like play, and there is a lot of play, and kids learn by playing, but it's very specific. There are strategies that the experts in our early childhood program know how to bring these students to the point we want them to be ready for K. And then we'll conclude the presentation. Dave Heisted will look at those results, how we know that we're getting the effect that we want with our students that are part of the Kinder Prep program. And again, we always go back, try to focus our work around our strategic direction. We describe our work through our pathways to graduation. And today we'll be talking about a specific intervention, Kinder Prep, that is one that's aiming at that milestone of getting, trying to reach our goal of all children ready for kindergarten by 2015. And with that, I will turn the mic over to Mary.
Thank you. One of the things that we focus on in Kinder Prep is we've been able to expand due to your generous support. And so this slide really represents where we were last year in terms of number of sites and number of classes and students versus where we are going into the 13-14 school year. Last year we had offered Kinder Prep at 4 sites, Pond, Southwood, Valley View, and Washburn. This year we've expanded to 5 sites. We do have an Indian Mounds cohort which will be housed at Pond, but will have Indian Mounds students. We have a morning class at Oak Grove. We continue to have classes at Pond. We have our brand new early childhood wing at Valley View, and we have 4 classes there, 2 morning and 2 afternoon sections. And then we continue to have a morning and afternoon section at Southwood as well. So we have jumped from 9 classes to 14, being able to offer 14 classes beginning this fall. And we're serving 90 additional students this year. So we have a total of 252 students that we will be able to serve. The students that we target in Kinder Prep are mainly students who have some educational risk factors. Those could be socioeconomic status, English, a lot of them are English language learners. There could be different family factors that put them at risk for educationally at risk, and so we target those students for this program. As a result of our growth, we've also, as you can see, expanded the number of teachers that are in our program as well. We're proud to say that in Bloomington, Kinder Prep is really a leader in pre-kindergarten education. We are a 4-star parent-aware rated program, which is a rating system developed by the state of Minnesota. All of our teachers are licensed in early childhood education. Most of them have master's degrees. Our curriculum is aligned closely with K-12. And our assessments, and Dr. Heisted will talk about that, are really linked to students' later academic progress and success. Our paraprofessionals also act as instructional paraprofessionals, and so we have a lead teacher, but our paraprofessionals that are in the room also conduct a lot of instructional duties. We have a great partnership with Minnesota Reading Corps, and as a result, we have literacy tutors in all of our classrooms. And we use the RTI, response to intervention, or response to instruction model. We also are a Seeds of Early Literacy program, which is a high-quality literacy and math-rich protocol that defines what we do and how we do it in our classrooms, how we instruct. So what's ahead for Kinder Prep? We are looking forward to adopting the learning supports model that the district is adopting. There, as you probably have read, there continue to be increased funding sources for early learning, the Early Learning Scholarship or Mini-Minds. We continue to pursue opportunities that come along for increased funding. We are in the process of refining our assessment processes so that we can get really good data that will inform our instruction with our students. We also continue to emphasize that alignment both horizontally and vertically with K-12. So looking at what the standards are at the next level and making sure that we are preparing our students for success. This year, we also will undergo a curriculum adoption process. We need to update particularly our literacy curriculum, and so we have Beth Flottmeyer from the district will be helping us with that process. One of our long-term goals is to implement the early childhood workshop model, which is a framework that aligns closely with experiences that children will have in kindergarten. And it is based on responsive classroom and readers and writers workshop. We hope to continue to collaborate with community pre-K providers so that children that are in childcare or faith-based preschools or community preschools will have, will be prepared, will come to kindergarten prepared as well. And we do that by opening up training opportunities for community pre-K providers and childcare providers in the Bloomington area. Continuing to do program outreach, that's a huge part of what we do, is reaching the families that we want to target for our services. And so continue our outreach efforts will continue to be a huge focus. And then parent engagement. As always, that is a huge focus in our program, and we hope to align with the district's parent engagement efforts as well. But really educating parents about what their children need to be successful in school is really the foundation that we try to lay in our Kinder Prep program. I'm going to turn it over to Jody, who's going to give us kind of an overview of what happens in a Kinder Prep classroom. And this would be for a typical half-day schedule, which is anywhere between 2.5 to 3 hours a day.
Hi, I'm Jody Bohr, and I work at the Pond Family Center as an early childhood teacher. And I've been with the program since 2004 when it began as Early Reading First. So the first photo on top is where I'm leading circle time. This is a time when children learn theme-related vocabulary, letter names and sounds, listening and responding to books read out loud, singing songs, and doing rhyming and math activities. It is here also where children are learning how to sit for 15 or 20 minutes at a time. They're learning how to take turns talking in a group setting, and also how to listen and be quiet while the teacher is talking. And toward the end of the year, they can actually raise their hand and wait to be called on. The second photo is one of our Minnesota Reading Corps members, Tony, who is reading one of my favorite books to the classroom. It's called The Little Old Lady Who Was Not Afraid of Anything. And he's being a good sport, wearing a gray wig and pretending to be the lady, which the children love. So after circle time is Discovery Center time, and that's a 45-minute block of time where the children can move around to the different learning centers in our classroom as they wish. These children are doing sensory activities. The girl on the left corner is playing with snow and making pretend pie. And then the girl at the top, Ruby, has been playing with shaving cream. And sometimes that gets really messy, but it's easy to clean up. And we've actually let the children, or encouraged the children to pretend to do shaving. And then they like to talk about their dads a lot that day. We also have a dramatic play area and a block area. And we change our themes monthly, which really gives children a chance to learn a variety of vocabularies. So Ruby is on the left. No, Ruby is on the right, pretending to be, I think she's pretending to be a pilot flying her own airplane in our transportation theme. And then Abby is playing in our woodworking shop when we do a construction theme. She's got paint samples, wood, tools, and her hard hat, and I think she's ready. She kind of looks like she might be able to start her own TV show. We also have a reading area and a writing area, and the reading area is very comfortable with small chairs and a little sofa, and you can see Jing reading a book to herself. She started out school with very little English. I remember the only thing she could say was, "Thank you very much." And toward the end of the year, by the end of the year, she was speaking in sentences. The upper right corner is our art table, and art is offered every day. 2 of the four days, I teach in a 4-day program. We plan the art and encourage children to use the materials that we set out. And then the other 2 days, children can decide what materials they would like to use and what masterpieces they would like to create. I'd also like to add that during Discovery Center time, we also do targeted interventions with children who are not making adequate progress, and we do ongoing assessments to decide who to work on during that time and give them one-on-one attention. The boy on the left, Giancarlo, is participating in small group time, and each day we take about 20 minutes, and we have the children in our room divided up into 4 different groups of 4 to 5 children, and each of them is with a teacher or a para or a MRC member, and we do targeted direct instruction on the early literacy skills that are our goals, and also the math skills. We have a children's computer in our classroom, and the children have a lot of fun playing the games that are all learning games, and they're able to figure out things that some of us didn't even know how to do. And I'll just add that today, in my classroom before I left, they were installing a smart board into my classroom, so I'm looking forward to using that with the children as well. And they will love it, I'm sure. The bottom corner is Samia, and she is playing at our math area, and we have lots of different manipulatives that help children learn shapes and numbers and puzzles and counting and patterning. And then I'd like to just in closing, tell you a little story that kind of shows, and I think it really links to the video, that that the children in our classrooms really are learning a lot, but they're having fun while they're doing it. At the end of the year, I always ask the children to reflect on what they like about school and what they're going to miss about kinder prep. And they usually say they're going to miss their friends and their teachers. But at the end of this year, one of the girls who started out with very little English said that her favorite thing was the word bird, which is an activity where I have this bird and they get to choose 3 objects out of the container, and it's practicing words from our theme over and over again. And it just shows that she really keyed into learning English with that particular activity. And then there was another boy who, this was so cool because it didn't seem like they were going to be able to come up with any more answers. Some kids said they liked to play in the block area and the art. And then finally one boy really excitedly raised his hand and said he was going to really miss books. And it just really warmed my heart because I knew that this was a child, and like many of our children, had very little exposure to reading books and finding out how enjoyable that can be. Thank you.
Should we ask for any questions at this point before I go through the study?
Sure.
Why don't we do that?
All right, any board members? Questions based on what you've heard?
I had
Director
just
Bergstrom.
one here, and if you'll bear with me, I'll find the page. I wrote it down. Let's see, I think it's your slide 6 where you're looking at the future of kinder prep. You mentioned collaboration with community pre-K providers. I'm just curious how well that's going.
We've had a community child care provider network in effect for, I'm not sure, Tom, for several years, I believe, where we've offered various forms of professional development to community-based early child care providers. I think one of the things that we did just a couple weeks ago, actually, we invited the community child care providers to our Seeds of Early Literacy training, which is a pretty extensive literacy training. It's 3 full days, 3 8-hour days, and just sent out an invitation to see, and we had several that responded, and they were eager for that information. And so I think that if we can improve experiences, knowing that there are children that will be served in child care programs outside of the district, if we can make sure that they're getting the experiences that they need to be successful in kindergarten, I'm hoping that that effort will continue to flourish. And I think that's one of the charges of the early childhood specialist position, Karen Cadigan's position. We'll do a lot of outreach and education for the community-based providers.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Other questions before we proceed? And Mr. Heisler, go ahead.
I'll just provide a little bit of context. The incentive for doing this analysis, I have had very, robust results from the kindergarten assessments that we give, indicating that a percentage of kids that are ready for school is quite high. I'll try this one. But I hadn't had an opportunity to see whether particular programs were having the kind of impact that we wanted. Then we get this call from Tom saying the Secretary of Education, Arnie Duncan, is coming. Could you get data for the Commissioner of Education within the next couple of days that would show impact of the program on ELL students? So once you get into the data and you found the pretest and you found the post-test, then it becomes fun for me, putting it all together and actually documenting in a way that would be kind of state-of-the-art kind of a program evaluation at the federal level. And it turned out the feds, when they were here, were interested in this evaluation report, so the commissioner and the feds took it. But the main thing is you want to have a matched sample of students who didn't get the program, and then see if you're seeing the results in a way that would indicate that the program caused higher learning. And so we use the same methodology in doing the flipped instruction evaluation that you saw before. So I'm not going to go into great detail on it. But basically, we got all the information on special education status, English language learner status, free and reduced lunch, which racial ethnic group and language groups students were from. And then we got the total literacy and the total numeracy scores from the beginning of kindergarten. While the program has historically reported literacy results, I knew that there was a component that also dealt with numeracy, and it was interesting to see that we had very robust findings with numeracy as well. And on the next slide, you see we created a match sample based on these data. I kind of set up a hierarchy of the factors that I wanted to get 100% correspondence between the control and the treatment group. So we got English language learner status, special ed students, free and reduced price lunch, racial, ethnic, home language, then gender, and then if all those factors were prevalent, then I used the birth date to decide which student would be the matched sample. And it turned out that students in the comparison group were identical on at least 5 of those 6 variables. So it was a very close match. The computer chose based on the sorting which student would be the next one that would match the kinder prep student. So that's the methodology part. And we got 90 pairs of kinder prep and non-kinder prep that had perfect matches, and then another 14 pairs that had 15 out of 16 variables. And as mentioned already, a large percentage of the population were students of color. You can see that there are 7 white students and 7 white students in kinder prep group and 9 in the match sample, and that over 90% of the students were students of color. On the next page, it's a little bit small to see, but the home languages that were represented, 50% of the students in the sample spoke Spanish at home, 25% spoke English, but you can see Somali was about 12%, and we had Swahili and Polish and Russian and French and all of these various language groups. It's interesting that we have almost 100 language groups in our kindergarten class when you count. There are a lot of singleton ones, but there are a lot of there's a lot of diversity among our population. And this program looked for students that were at risk. So it's not surprising that 90% of the students were free and reduced price lunch, 72% English language learners, 5% special ed. So then the results, what I did was I took the total score for literacy and the total score for numeracy from the kindergarten assessment we've used in Bloomington for years, and it's been shown to be predictive of the 3rd grade reading score in study after study. And it turned out that the kinder prep students had an average of 82.5 on the literacy, total literacy, whereas the non-kinder prep, identical demographics, had an average of 46.2. And those differences were statistically significant. And with numeracy as well, the differences weren't as dramatic, but the kinder prep students scored 51.5 versus 40.4. So the bottom line is the kinder prep program produced causal impact on these students greater than students who hadn't had the kinder prep program. And so it's really good evidence that groups that are looking to fund early childhood might be able to look at it and say, oh, we'd like to help Bloomington serve even more students, because we really do have a waiting list still. And some of the students that are in the comparison group just show up right before kindergarten. There's no way you're going to capture them, but we have a feeling that we could capture more of the population if we had the funding. Now, caveats on here's the interpretation. It is a clear causal relationship because of the match sample pre-post design. In the future, though, caveats, first of all, if you're missing important variables, your sample could be biased. So even though they had similar demographics, maybe some of these students were really, really, really low on early literacy, who were in the comparison group. To know that for sure, you have to have some kind of a assessment at like age 3. And we do, in Minnesota, require age 3 screening for all students. So in the future, when I do this study, what I'd like to do is to use the kindergarten screening results as another control variable in the study. The early childhood program is moving to a preschool screening instrument that includes pre-literacy, and it does predict kindergarten literacy really well. So in the future, when we do this study, we'll have that as a variable. Other things that I'd like to be able to control for, but we didn't have in the data set, would be the length of time of the student in the country, the concentration of poverty in the neighborhood, the education level of the primary caregiver. Mother's education predicts about as good or better than any other variable that's in the literature. And then family income. Free and reduced price lunch at kindergarten was what I used, but if you had actual family income, you could do a better controlled study. And then the next steps for evaluation, we are starting out with a new pre-K screener. We're going to have a MAP test for grade 1. We're going to have our second and third grade assessments. And the new MCA3 results, which are coming out tomorrow morning in the paper, are going to indicate that the state standards have been dramatically changed, and they've increased the level of proficiency that you have to be considered proficient reader. So we're going to have to recalibrate all of our assessments, set new kindergarten readiness standards. These standards are kind of world-class, and so you'll see in the paper tomorrow that the percentage of students proficient in the state is going to decrease by 15 to 20% across all the districts in the state. So we'll just, we'll recalibrate and do this. But the idea would be, okay, we know that we're producing this really great result by kindergarten. Most studies that have followed preschool programs see some kind of a decline by the time you get to third grade, so the effect is not as strong by the time you get to third grade. So I want to not only see if there's a decline, but find the teachers who beat the odds that in first, second, third grade are producing results that keep that big difference there. So it's an opportunity for us to extend the study and look at what do we do in kindergarten once we have these great preschool results that will continue the pathway for those students to be college and career ready. And that pretty much is all I wanted to say about the study. I'll probably write it up at some point in a Word document, but in general, what I'd like to do is to document the effectiveness of our really stellar programs, but also identify programs that may not be producing the kinds of results that we've seen with flipped instruction and with KinderPrep, and to have those available so that we can learn from those. So throughout the period of this next year, we'll be looking at those kinds of studies as well. This was probably the biggest difference for a program that I've seen in my days evaluating. It was obvious from the initial data that I was going to find significant results, but this kind of impact has a really huge and potential lasting effect. Now, at the presentation by the panel, There were several experts in the field that talked about 3 studies where they've seen significant longitudinal effects of pre-K across time. And I think, you know, I'd like to find that same kind of thing for our program. And if there are components that are missing, we can feed back and say, well, if we strengthened our family component, or if we did a little bit more with, you know, some other kinds of language skills or whatever. So we don't want to rest on our laurels, but that's why they came here, is that they heard what a great program it was, and it's really cool that we've got the data to support it.
President Lyle? Dr. Abel?
Thank you. Dr. Heisted, I always enjoy your presentations.
Thank you.
They're very well done. Can you talk to me a little bit more about the control group? Was the control group completely void of any early education, or did they come out of some, say, parochial program?
Very perceptive. That's a missing component to the study, as well as being able to describe in detail who your control group was, what kind of preschool experiences they have. We know what kind of preschool experiences the students had in our kinder prep, but it would be a variety, going from home-based to no preschool at all, to some could have been in very, you know, it could have been in Head Start or other kinds of programs that have been shown to be effective in the past. So ultimately, it'd be good. I know we're collecting some of that information now, and I'm going to be working with the team to see if we can get more detailed information as kids come into kindergarten. You know, perhaps have an additional form that would be filled out about pre-K experiences and some of the background characteristics, so we can better know. So in this case, most of the students were in poverty, and a lot of ELL students. And my guess is not too many of them probably went to private preschools, but I don't know that for a fact.
Just a more general question. Do we have, as a district, any knowledge of how many of our students who are entering kindergarten have come through some type of pre-K training or education?
Mary, do you know that?
Is it 50%, 90%?
I do know that in relation to the students that we haven't, what we say, treated, and that are part of that control group, we did do a follow-up because we found of the approximately 100 students that just about 10% of our students that weren't ready for K. We actually went back and surveyed those families last year after the fact and asked them what sort of pre-K experience they had. We found one common factor of an overwhelming majority of those students that were not ready, that were part ultimately of that, would have been part of that control group, had no preschool experience at all.
1 out of 10.
None at all. So they came to kindergarten, and at kindergarten was their self-identified first experience with any kind of education. Just an interesting thing that we learned from that, and as we talk about the future of educating many times immigrants whose cultures haven't had the opportunity for education and certainly pre-K education, when asking those same families that didn't have that experience, more than 50% of them said the reason we didn't was we didn't think that there was anything we had to do prior to kindergarten. So as we look forward with our outreach efforts even before kinder prep, the work that Karen Cadigan is going to do with us as we reach out into our community, into our different cultures, and work with our Family Academy and Family Stars Academy, first creating that expectation that there is something that you do prior to kindergarten is one of those first critical steps, because there are a lot of families out there that just don't know there's anything that they should be doing.
Thank you.
Yes, Director Bergstrom.
Just a quick question. First of all, thank you guys for coming. Thank you for what you do. I know our sons benefited greatly from the preschool program here. We're fortunate to be able to put them through it. I'm looking at slide 18, the home language study participants. Just quickly, can you tell me, these kiddos come to us perhaps having some issues with English as just understanding it basically.
Mhm.
When they're finished with that year, what kind of progress are we seeing? Jody, you mentioned that there was one child that said that could only say thank you very much or something like that, and at the end was complete sentences. Are we seeing similar results?
We are. We do assessments 3 times a year in terms of vocabulary assessment, and we code the data, so it's red if they're far from target, yellow if they're close to target, and green if they're on target. And in looking at the data from the 2012-2013 school year, it was amazing to see almost 100% of our students started out in the red in vocabulary in terms of being very far from target. And by the end of the year, I want to say it was almost 60%, between 50 and 60% were proficient, had reached target, which doesn't sound exceptionally great, but when you figure the starting point where children were coming in with no English, this is a timed test, so it's a fluency measure, and it checks children's ability to identify pictures in 26 pictures in 1 minute is our target. So you can imagine if they didn't have any English language skills, and then to be able to identify 26 pictures in 1 minute is significant amount of change.
Did they have to verbalize what they were looking at?
Yes.
A ball or something?
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Be a common noun. Yeah, the fun thing for me is that the really effective instruction is fun for the kids. The learning rhyming and learning, kind of alphabetics can be done in a way that it's really fun activity, and the kids don't even know they're getting explicit instruction in those skills. And so the kindergarten test does include a rhyming component, a beginning sounds component, knowing the letter names, but the letter sounds is such a critical thing, pre-reading skill, and these kids really do improve a lot over a period of a year.
Great, thank you very much.
Board members, any other questions or comments? Yes, Director Corman.
Yes, I want to say thank you again. I'm a big fan of the early childhood programs that we have, kinder prep and the preschool programs too, which I'd love maybe sometime we can hear some more about the preschool programs too that we have at Pond and Southwood. My question is also in regards to the home language study participants. Are you able to access materials, books, or any other resources that you can get for the students during the classroom time that is in their own language? Just to kind of encourage that same, language development skills?
Yeah, I do have, in most classrooms, we have a lot of Spanish, children's books that are in Spanish, because that is one of the dominant languages. And I know we also have some in Somali and Vietnamese, but I think it is a need to have more languages, books in other languages. And another example would be, I do have a take-home program where the children take the books home and read it with their parents and sign it and bring it back. So it's a book reading program where we're encouraging parent involvement. And we do have other languages represented in those books. But, I mean, you look at how many languages are represented, and it's a lot. I'm not sure, it would probably be good for children to see books in their first language, especially if the language system looks different from the letters in English. Like Spanish has a lot of the same letters, but just to see a book in Arabic would be good. Part of the problem is we can't read it, so that's why I think it's helpful if you can send it home, because then the parents can read it in their first language. So,
Because it will be interesting too to follow that, the kids who are able to have access to those books and, parents read to them at home in their home language, how much more of that development we can see. Because we know that, I know we're not talking about bilingual education here, but we know that if kids are in both languages, they're able to kind of, have better skills in that second language that they're developing.
definitely.
Thank you.
Others? All right, then. You must have covered all the territory we needed to learn about today, so thank you very much. We appreciate you all being here and taking the time to bring us up to date.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For the next item on the agenda, I want to report that we had a closed session earlier today, started a meeting a little bit late because of the meeting we had at 6 o'clock. The purpose of that meeting was to discuss negotiations with the various bargaining units in the school district, and we were brought up to date on where things stand. And in addition, then we finalized approval of a summary of the superintendent's evaluation. I reported last meeting that we had a meeting on July 22nd where we went over survey and summarized responses, and we voted approval then of a report that we are providing then to the Human Resources Office for the 2011-2012, or excuse me, 2012-2013 Superintendent's Performance Report. And then I'd like to report that the evaluation came out as, well, I'll make the formal statement as we discussed as a board. So I'll say the School Board of Independent School District 271 has completed its annual superintendent evaluation process and finds that the superintendent provides excellent financial skills, community building skills, and has been effective at building credibility with stakeholders. The school board looks forward to continuing to work with the superintendent around mutually agreed goals, programs, and current issues of the district. The superintendent has 2 years left on the contract. So that's the legally required summary of what it is we did. Again, we acted confidentially in a closed meeting in order to complete the personnel matter and then submit that report to Human Resources. So congratulations, Superintendent Fujitaki, and we'll look forward to working with you in the next year. We move on now to board member reports. Has anyone official business that they'd like to report as a board assignment? Yes, Director Bergstrom.
I wouldn't exactly call this official business to report on, but I would like to say that had an opportunity to go to the back-to-school celebration this morning, where all the employees came back to Kennedy High School. It's always an interesting morning. It's an hour-long program. Enjoyed that a lot. Also, just want to mention that school starts next week. So for those of folks that are used to your summer schedules, we're going to have lots of kids in the crosswalks. So just please be careful. Drive a little slower and make sure you look 2 or 3 times before you go through those intersections. Thank you.
Are there other board members who'd like to make a report at this time? Okay. Superintendent Fujitaki.
Okay, in consultation with the board chair, it is proposed that we cancel the school board meeting scheduled for September 9th and establish a meeting on September 16th to take its place. We need a motion to approve this change in schedule, please.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion by the board? Right then, just as explanation, we're looking to again consolidate meetings when we have limited business, and rather than having separate study session or workshop session, we're looking to have reports at the next board meeting and postponing that then till September 16th. Is everyone okay with that? Then we'll move to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
That completes my report for tonight. It's time.
That was
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Well, we're getting late here, Artie, so yes, we're almost at 10 o'clock. Is there any other business anyone would like to bring forward at this time? If not, we're at the conclusion of our business, and the meeting is adjourned.